Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
My notes. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I call the meeting to order. We got a lot to cover today. Opening remarks from the chair. I want to say welcome. I want to say that this board meeting was moved from, for scheduling reasons, we had to move it by a couple of weeks, with the result that we are not joined today by Carl Zare and Bill Fish, both of whom are traveling. Dr. Ann Golden did join us earlier this morning, but she cannot telephone in without interfering with the audio-visual system, so she won't be here for the public session, but she's very engaged with us, and I will report her comments on the regional transportation plan later. So I regret those three directors are not with us today. I think things are going well. Phil, you're doing a terrific job. We're sort of 6 months into it, 5, 6 months into it, and we're delighted. And we're delighted with how the team is coming together. In terms of correspondence, we have letters from various people today. We have correspondence from Brenda Thompson, Vincent Puhaka, Richard Hennick, and Moya Beal. And of those, I think Brenda and Moya, is that right, are here? They're both here as well. They're from the Scarborough Transit Action. They've written regarding Metrolinx's review of the Kirby and Lawrence East Smart Track stations, the Scarborough Subway extension, and the Seven Top Scarborough LRT. We have correspondence from Justin Davis, dated January 1, regarding the $6 Presto card issuance fee and a monthly printed Presto card. We have correspondence from Jim Reiki, president of the Humber Bay Shores Condominium Association, of February 22, regarding the initial business case for a park lawn station, a subject to be addressed today. We have correspondence from Edward Leon, president of the LFL Group, regarding advancing the Jane LRT project as described in the 2041 Regional Transportation Plan, also on the agenda. And we have correspondence from George Vestal, dated February 24, requesting the creation of a pedestrian crossing across the Richmond Hill corridor to facilitate access to the lower Don River. All those letters are being posted on our website, and management will respond to each of them. With that, by way of introduction, I turn to the CEO for his introductory remarks and the introduction of a couple of colleagues. Phil.
Welcome everyone to the board meeting on International Women's Day. It is a privilege for me and for the board to have all of you present here today. And just to point to the fact that if you look at our board has a 50-50% gender balance. I'm very proud to say my senior management team of 10 members have 6 women on that team, and that makes us a very, very powerful team. And we are very, as an organization, very aligned in our strategic objectives, which we have made public before and which you may have seen. We call this lovingly the wheel, with all of our strategic objectives, that we have a target to, in our senior management cadre, to be at 2021, to be at gender balance in that team. We are currently at 28% female representation in that top team, and over the next 3 years we will move to 50%. This is really exciting for us, and in the years to come, starting with this current year, you'll see diversity and inclusion initiatives and a big focus on getting our organization to build that character, where we maximize the capability of our teams and our people. I'm also very glad to say that as a provider, we are lending our voice to a brilliant global campaign, which is called PT numerate 4ME, hashtag PT4 numerate 4ME, which stands for Public Transport for Me. And this campaign hopes to make public transport safe, inviting, and comfortable for women, which is great and which we need to see. Safety is a very big priority for us in this organization, and even more so the safety of women traveling on our network. And there's an excellent video on this issue that we've just posted on Twitter for everyone to see as well, so please go and have a look. In terms of achievements over the last quarter, glad to share with you that on the Barry Line GO service, Downsview Park GO station started service on December the 30th, which is great on the Barry Line. We've nearly doubled our service on the Barry Line now to a two-way service, hourly, all-day service every day of the week from January the 2nd, and that's a great step forward and part of our overall expansion plan for the Barry Line. We launched our Presto fare discount and the discounted double fare, and when traveling on TTC and a Go on Up, and that went live in January the 7th. And we started our campaign to develop more products and more services through marketing, and we did that on the Family Day weekend, February 17 and 19. And with our focus on marketing a different range of products in the future, be on the lookout for more campaigns to stimulate off-peak travel, which is a key feature of what we are trying to move towards in the future, with a GO rail service being point-to-point rather than a peak service, just a peak service oriented towards the center of Toronto. We've also launched our PC Express, our partnership with Loblaws, at 4 stations where web-based orders for goodies from Loblaws can be collected after work at stations. And it's very exciting to develop that part of our business and our service offering to our customer base. And then also on March 5, we've extended our Presto sales at Shoppers Drug Mart locations outside of Toronto. And our partnership with Shoppers have been a great success for us and has been extremely well received by the public, and is part of our campaign to give more choices to customers as we develop our service. In terms of procurements, we went out with RFQs, requests for qualifications, to upgrade the west segment of Lakeshore East, the East Corridor, on March the 2nd, all part of what we call Package 1, or the preparatory work for the on-corridor works that will follow later on in the year. We also put requests for proposals, or RFPs, out. This is the stage after RFQ when we get bidders to then bid to give us solutions for a hydrogen fuel cell locomotive pilot, and we went out with that in February 2022, and we announced that with the minister in parallel to the hydrogen feasibility study, which we completed at the back end of last year. And on February the 2028, we went out with the RFP to the market for welcoming bids for the Davenport Diamond, which is a very, very significant infrastructure investment and critical for our services along the Barrie corridor specifically. In terms of construction, start with construction at Confederation GO Station. I was out there 2 weeks ago. We've got a lot of work to do with CN to secure final agreements on how we operate along that corridor, but Confederation GO Station is a big part of our service pattern in the Hamilton area in the future. In terms of stakeholders and public engagement, just like to stress this again and say how much value we put on what we call Ask Metrolinx, which is a public town hall session, which we held the second one on February 26, and it's an open, accessible session where me and my team are available to the public to answer questions. And the themes that we had addressed on the evening was around Presto, Presto app, fare integration, noise mitigation, construction progress, timelines of the GO expansion, and many more issues. We had 132 people attend, both in person and online. We had 25 questions asked and answered at the open session town hall. We had 100 questions in total, and the balance of the 75 questions we've responded to in writing, are in the process of responding to that. And I think that's really important. All questions asked at this public town hall is addressed, and it was great to see At the first meeting, we had a really interesting mix of questions and people, and at the second meeting, we had an even more interesting mix and issues of people. But it's great to see that the general tenor of these town hall meetings is what we intended for it to be. It's a open sharing of information, and we take away from communities what their concerns are. So it's not just giving the formal pitch, it is about listening and responding to what communities express. Our objective as an organization is serving our communities. It's our mission statement, and that is where we are focusing. In terms of communities, we've done quite a lot of interesting things with regard to innovative work on public space and shared experiences, and we're going to share that with some of our presentations today on the integrated art program and the planned art installations at Eglinton Crosstown and Eglinton Crosstown stations. And we had that unveiling on January the 16th. And then during the last week, I shared some thoughts with the Toronto Region Board of Trade, 275 people, on where we are going as an organization, and shared our strategic objectives publicly. And over the last week, the Canadian Council of Public-Private Partnerships was addressed by Erin Corey and myself to give momentum and to support our supply chain with more information on how we're setting about securing the RER expansion, which is a very big program for us. I have the fantastic privilege to close this session by talking about two gentlemen, Michael and Shane. Can you join me up here, please? So Michael and Shane are respectively a conductor and a customer service ambassador on our UP service. And on board a Barry GO train, hiya guys, you can stop. You are too threatening. These guys did an amazing thing for us. On a GO train on February 21st, Michael discovered a man on the ground in distress when he investigated a passenger assist alarm. The person was in a very severe state of potentially a heart attack. He immediately called Shane to support him with a defibrillator. And he started with giving our customer CPR, and they then applied the defibrillator, and they resuscitated the individual and kept him alive till paramedics could arrive on the scene. And the rest of the crew went into the first aid protocol and ensured that the gentleman in question, the person in question's life, was protected. The great thing about the teamwork that we had at this occasion is our protocols, which people are trained in and don't expect really to use, is used. And when it's used, it can save lives. And so this is fantastic work. And Rob and myself would like to just shake their hands and thank them. And can I say something? The fact that they've got Bombardier tops on doesn't mean a thing. We're all in this together, whether they are suppliers to us or not. We all focus on one thing, and that's our customers. And guys, both of you, well done. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Phil. Are there any questions to Phil on anything he raised or anything he didn't raise that you wanted to ask about? We'll go right to the agenda then. The first item is the integrated art program. Leslie, you and the team are going to speak to this. And could you get Laura and Gunta to introduce themselves as an opening blow?
I'm just going to do that.
Perfect.
So before we start, first of all, thank you, Chair and the Board. I do want to introduce Gunther and Lauren. They'll introduce themselves, but I want to take note of an important development in the organization. This is being presented through Gunther in her role as Acting Vice President of Design Excellence Division. This is new for us. We have basically co-located and created greater synergies of all the design aspects of the organization: architecture, urban design, landscape architecture, universal design, sustainable design, interior design, and industrial design to support the organization. And Gunther is leading that for us now, and the integrated art program is one of those components. So
Is this known as the McKenna division of Metrolinx?
Over to you guys. I'm retiring.
Congratulations, Marianne.
Yeah,
That's
I'd
a
like-
signal,
Congratulations.
a signal
Thank you,
difference that
thank
you've
you
made
for
in
the
your,
acknowledgement. Now we just have to prove it out.
yes.
So
Yes,
design
which we
is
are.
good business.
and that's why we have Gunther. Gunther, do you want to introduce yourself and then invite Laura to introduce herself?
Yes.
Just say 1 minute about yourself.
Gunther Mackers. I've been with Metrolinx for about a year and leading the design excellence portion of the work. And we've been working very closely with all of Metrolinx and CPG. My background is in landscape architecture, and I've been working internationally. Most of my career has been with architects and other related disciplines. So with a strong background actually in the AFP process. So
Where were you before you came to Metrolinx last year?
Stantec Consulting.
Thank you. And Laura,
Hi. So I'm Laura Berzatti. I'm Senior Advisor.
speak up a little, please.
Laura Berzatti, Senior Advisor for Integrated Art. I was invited to work on the Ford Transit team in 2014 to develop policy for Metrolinx and joined Metrolinx in 2015. So I have developed this program and the projects you're going to see today. My background, I have a graduate degree in art history and certification in project management. Previously, I was at the Art Gallery of Ontario, the GTA's largest public art gallery, where I was doing exhibitions and public programs. I have a unique ability to talk to artists and engineers, which is really necessary.
Which is unique.
And where did you do your art history degree?
York University.
Very good. Thank you very much.
No.
Could have said something else, but that's all right.
I heard they have a
It's an excellent program at York. It's a great program at York. Okay, who's making the presentation?
I am.
Fire away, Gunther.
Okay. Well, we'd like to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present the Integrated Art Program. And we'll start with our commitment to the public with the program. And it's Metrolinx's Integrated Public Art Program is an important part of the customer experience with a mandate to build a cohesive collection that is regional in scale and representative of the best of contemporary artwork. The Integrated Art Program brings many benefits. It provides an enhanced experience with the current and future customers in mind. It creates civic pride, a sense of place, and a special local identity. And Metrolinx is looking to a higher standard of civic leadership and social responsibility. What is integrated art? Integrated art must be permanent and integrated into the buildings to become part of a full experience. The program was initiated in 2014 and became policy and a requirement at Metrolinx in 2016. The program is a professionally led process for the artist and artwork selection with external subject matter experts reviewing the submissions. And we're looking forward to 2021 when everyone will see the first art unveiled along the Eglinton Crosstown. Announcements with new locations and artists on our regional network will be ongoing over the next several years. The Integrated Art Program, as Phil mentioned, was officially launched this past January on the 16th at the Ontario Science Centre in a well-received media event where we publicly announced the selected artwork concepts for Eglinton Crosstown, and it was also the official launch of the Metrolinx Integrated Art Program. The launch received good coverage by local media and positive public response where the public requested even more integrated art across the entire LRT line. I'll go into a bit more depth about the Eglinton Crosstown project. The program began with a master agreement in 2012 between Metrolinx, the City of Toronto, and the TTC, allocating $10 million to artwork at below-grade stations. Metrolinx ran a competitive process where 187 artists responded, 14 were shortlisted, and 8 artists were selected by an external advisory panel of subject matter experts. In addition to the artist and artwork, the $10 million art budget allocates money for any replacement and repair of artworks over the next 30 years, and $1 million for the development of a digital art program to be displayed across the entire 19 kilometers of the LRT, and that program is still to come. On Eglinton Crosstown, we have 6 intermodal stations with 8 pieces of art, and we've chosen those sites for several reasons. They're connection points on the customer journey. They have high ridership and visibility, and they are equally distributed across the LRT. 2 of the artists were awarded the projects through a mentorship program for emerging local artists, and those we'll identify. And of the 8 artists, 6 are Canadian, 3 are from the GTHA, and 2 are international. So we'll provide a brief overview of the 8 crosstown artists and artworks, and we'll start at the West End with Mount Dennis, with a piece titled Up to This Moment by Hadley and Maxwell. They're Ontario artists. This is a video artwork that includes archival material of the historic former Kodak site and surrounding neighborhood. At Mount Dennis, we have an emerging artist with an untitled piece by Sarah Swinner, another Ontario artist, and hers is a photographic collage digitally printed onto layers of glass that explores the history of photography. At Caledonia, Ride of Your Life by Janice Kerbel is a large-scale mosaic tile installation that plays on a poster aesthetic and recalls the use of mosaic in transit system design. CEDARVALE is Super Signals by Douglas Copeland, and that's an immersive wall installation intended to evoke transit iconography and symbols. Eglinton, Light from Within by Rodney Luttrell with Louise Withoft, and theirs is a sculpture wall installation made of dichroic and mirrored glass backlit by LED lights intended to bring light deep into the station. At the Science Centre, we have a Total Lunar Eclipse by Sarah Morris. And that's silk-screened, oversized porcelain tiles with a unique pattern and color scheme developed by the artist, intended to convey motion and light. And at Kennedy, Locations of Meaning, and related to Toronto by Joseph Kossuth. The word meaning is translated into 72 languages spoken in Toronto, each word laser cut in steel and inset into etched tile to create a large wall installation. And at Kennedy, we have another emerging artist, Dagmar Agenda, an Ontario artist, and she brings images from a study that are composed as a collage and printed onto a skylight, as well as light boxes and a pedestrian corridor below, bringing light and a sense of the outdoors into the station. And a more recent announcement, as Phil had mentioned, is Davenport Diamond, where artist Alex McLeod has the winning piece, and that was announced February 28th. The Davenport Diamond Guideway and Greenway is an example of a project and process well done. It had strong leadership, substantive stakeholder consultation, and strong team collaboration. It is 1.4 kilometers of art that shows the Guideway as a feature through the neighborhood, and it creates a local landmark as illustrated in the images. And the artwork is the world's largest digital image, and it is at a civic scale. We are excited and looking forward to 34 other confirmed individual artworks across 18 of our upcoming projects. We have over $25 million to date allocated in artwork budget, and a program that is regional, system-wide, and continues to grow. We give a sincere thank you to Laura Barazati, who since 2015 has worked tirelessly to create a world-class program for Metrolinx, and a thank you to the support the teams across Metrolinx have given the program.
Well spoken, Gunther. Thank you very much, Laura. What's your level of satisfaction with the outcome of where we are so far? A process sounds great, but step back and say, how good is it? You know, how good's the output?
I'm very pleased with what we were able to deliver for the public, and I think this is a good expression of Metrolinx's values. The program, as you can see, was piloted on Eglinton Crosstown LRT, but is now rolling out across the system. And I think if we want to continue to produce works like this, we need to continue to endorse the program.
You seem to have a good gender mix among the artists. Are there any Indigenous artists in the group in this first set of projects?
In this first set, no. I think our objective is to provide diverse applicants and artists contracted across the entire program. In any one project, it's going to be difficult to achieve complete parity.
But it is an explicit objective to achieve diversity, including
Yes, and actually,
Indigenous
I would say we've actually been called out in a positive way for the number of women, as well as the number of emerging artists. There's an objective here to build capacity within the industry, something that is lacking currently. So you're going to see a sort of shift over time.
Floor's open. Mary Ann.
Very good question about and congratulations on moving this along. I gather it's a small team doing a lot of big work. My question relates to the digital art, Davenport Diamond, and often in integrated and public art, we try not to get too much technical maintenance requirements. When you say digital art, what do you mean? Is it
So the digital program was piloted for the Eglinton Crosstown LRT.
Is it projection or is it what?
It is screen-based works that's going to be using our digital assets owned by Metrolinx that is going to be installed and maintained by an ADCO, like an advertising company.
So that's built into the cost?
It's built into the cost, and it's also maintained by the advertising contractor as well as Project Co.
So it's 1.4 kilometers of digital screen.
No, so the digital program is for the Eglinton Crosstown LRT on digital advertising screens that will be installed in stations.
Davenport
Diamond.
is,
What's this thing?
You said it was digital.
You said it was digital.
It is a digitally printed, rendered.
Digitally printed, so there are no.
It's not live.
They are fixed aluminum panels on Davenport
got it.
with low maintenance.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I had the same question. Thank you for asking. Any other comments, questions? I think you should take this as a high level of satisfaction, indeed pride in what you've accomplished, Howard.
And we look forward to seeing it.
No, absolutely, but
It's all in the delivery now. We're between the cup and the lip.
it's good. This good, right? The good process.
It is a good process.
Really,
but
really
we have
nice.
to support this initiative to get it in place the way it has been conceived and designed. And there are a lot of, when engineers and architects and artists speak together, it's an integrated team that will deliver this. An artist can't do it on their own. The architect clearly can't do it. So again, it's supporting that team through the delivery process. We look at Peter Zook and the capital projects guys because we need to. It's not easy. This next step is not easy either.
Howard?
It's all within the program.
Right.
Just picking up the comment you made in terms of the indigenous art, Aboriginal art, I think it's so critical a part of the culture, the history, and it has to be given some priority. And I look forward to the future program which you focus on getting that on board also.
It's pretty hard to imagine in this region with an art program that it not include Indigenous artists. It just wouldn't fit. And I get it. We're only looking at the first 6 or 8 selections here, but over time, I would hope we'd have a strong representation.
Yes.
Anybody want anything else to say on this?
It's exciting.
Excellent job. Thank you very much. Leslie, you're up next, so don't you move, but have you got anybody joining you?
Yes, I do. I have Antoine Belayev and Lisa Salzberg joining me, and I'll, as they're settling in,
Well, just let me see if Phil
introduce
wants to
them.
make any introductory
Yep.
comments here. Phil, do you have anything you want to say before we turn to Leslie? This is the Regional Transportation Plan. This is it, okay? So this is the moment we've been working for, I think, 3 years towards today.
10 years.
Today is a very important day for us as a team. Bringing the regional transportation plan to this stage, whereby we have a very strong separate plan document, which we'll call the draft final plan. It shows what good looks like for infrastructure and operational processes and fare integration and a whole host of different things that are encapsulated in 5 strategic initiatives that will bring regional transportation to a new level by 2041. And this plan is therefore what we see as the foundation for how the next years need to be approached in terms of regional transportation. Getting it to the stage where we have the plan in this final shape, and the reason why we still call it draft is we have a strong, very strong drive built into the plan to continue consultation and to bring communities and other transit operations with us. The second part of the document, which Antoine and Lisa will talk about, would be the Making It Happen document. And that is, how do we take that plan, work with elected leadership as well as with communities to get that prioritized and implemented. Thanks. Lead off.
So just before Antoine dives right in, to correct the chair, in many respects, this document is 10 years in the making, insofar as the learnings from 2008 we have brought forward, and the document has evolved to that. When Antoine and Lisa go through this, I think we want to thank hundreds of people, because this did not happen. We focused on it in the last 3 years, but really the content comes from the last 10 years of experience of the outputs of the 2008 plan.
That's well said. And it just feels like you've emphasized the point. We've been building towards this, of setting the markers out another decade.
Yes.
The big move, net has been a huge success that the previous board approved back in 2008, and this is the next this is a decade further extension of all of that. So it's a very important piece of work you've done, Leslie, and I congratulate you, Antoine, Lisa, and everybody else who's worked on this inside and outside Metrolinx.
Thank you. So over to Antoine.
Antoine, we've read this. We've gone through it numerous times. I want you to just highlight and then allow directors to engage with you.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to build on the thanks again. You see this over inch of paper. These are the final materials, and numerous drafts came before it. So my entire team and people inside the organization, and especially Ministry of Transportation, other ministries, and municipalities especially, have been extremely generous with their time. Just to recap what we did since we last saw you in December, we went through our 11,000 comments, 3,400 survey responses, hundreds of emails, dozens of municipal and stakeholder submissions. We took a close look at what people were telling us. We responded to the people who communicated with us through Metrolinx Engage. We wrote back to municipalities, and we made adjustments to the plan. We separated the chapter called Making It Happen into a separate document. And now, very briefly, Lisa will go over the key characteristics and changes made to the plan, and then we'll go into Making It Happen.
Thanks. So the 2041 RTP represents the vision, the goals, the strategies, and the actions for the region's transportation system to 2041. It represents, as our CEO said earlier, what good looks like. The RTP is not only a plan for Metrolinx. We've mentioned this and spoken to this effect over the last 3 years with our work. It's a plan that will need to be implemented by all those who implement transportation improvements and services across the region, including municipalities and provincial ministries. We will need to work closely with those partners and to align with them as we move forward to implement the plan. The strategies of the plan: deliver, connect, optimize, integrate, and prepare. These are the ways forward that we have listed actions for throughout this document. Strategy 1 is already underway. As Leslie said, it builds on the experience of the last 10 years and all of the work that's underway now to deliver on the billions of dollars of investments that have been made to the rapid transit projects across the region. The plan is not just about adding, but it's about enhancing. We place a lot of emphasis on enhancing what is there and making sure that we optimize for the future. One of the key emphasis of the plan is on increasing access to frequent rapid transit to make sure that we deliver the right benefits for residents, workers, and businesses in the GTA over the long term. If we can go to the next one. Quickly, in terms of changes, we spoke to you about what we were hearing at the meeting in December. So going forward, the key changes that have been made between the draft plan and this final plan that you see before you is strengthening the language around sustainability, health, safety, accessibility, and equity. We heard about those from the members of the public as well as from municipalities. We've elaborated on the role of the growth plan and the relationship between the growth plan, the regional transportation plan, and municipal planning documents. We've added new actions related to the safety of goods movement on rail corridors and safety, security, and emergency preparedness in particular. We've updated the project maps to reflect feedback we heard from municipalities, and we reframed the actions in the plan to be more outcome-focused, focus more on what is to be achieved rather than the how we are going to go about achieving those outcomes, and pushing those hows and ways forward into the Making It Happen paper. There's a further detail on all of the changes in the appendix to the staff report if you want to take a look.
And now I'll go briefly over the content of the Making It Happen paper. To be honest with you, it was a delicate exercise in balance on to answer briefly the question, how do we actually make these 200 pages happen, given that there's already over $30 billion committed and that everybody's very busy and feels that they don't need any more work. So it sets the stage for our conversation about what we can do to implement the plan in terms of prioritizing projects, setting priorities for advancing programs and projects, how we can enhance decision-making, where we will find sustainable operating and capital funding for the plan in the long term, and how we will know that we're actually on the right track, that we're doing a good job in implementing our vision towards the 2041 transportation system in a way that meets our legislated mandate to, for example, be coordinated with the growth plan. So we have some sample discussion questions in the plan, and I won't go over each one, but it's really about how can we streamline the process to get projects done faster. This is what we heard over and over again during consultation from municipalities, from stakeholders. We love what you're doing now. Could you push on the accelerator? How can we enhance existing structures to do this? How do we set priorities? How will the plan be funded, and how do we work together to collect data? So the next steps is to continue to engage with provincial, municipal, NGO partners to answer these questions, go one level down, and advance that discussion, and come back to the board in September 2018 with an update on the discussions that we've had. So we have some board recommendations, which are on the screen. So subject to your comments, suggestions for edits, we propose to finalize the plan and then finalize the Making It Happen paper for discussion.
This page is on page 26 in Diligent, if you can't read it on the screen.
Yeah.
As I said before, come back to this board in September 2018 with an update on discussions, and forward the plan to municipalities in the GO service area, as well as, very importantly, to the Minister of Transportation.
So let's see, to get this right, you're saying we're approving the final, word draft is coming off, 2041, and we'll go public, we'll post it, we'll distribute it. This is our plan, if we approve it today, to guide us for the next decade. Second, you go into the field with Making It Happen, go live and active in consultations, and you'll come back here in September, not with a final version, but with how it's going and what the issues are that are emerging.
Absolutely correct.
And then you'll also thank the board, on behalf of the board, you'll thank the literally hundreds of people, municipalities, all the stakeholders we've dealt with for their contribution to this, because I think of it, it is our plan, but it's their plan at this point, right, given the engagement. Is that the way to understand the motion?
That's actually correct, Chair. This moment in history is the same moment we had November 28th, 2008. This is March 8th, 2018. When the previous board approved the big move, this is your moment to approve, should you decide so, the 2041 plan.
Excellent presentation. Thank you for being to the point. We've had this here a lot, I know, but this is the moment of truth, colleagues, as to whether this captures where you'd like to see the region go for the next decade. I should report Ann Golden's not here today. She's been outspoken in previous meetings. She's had a lot of advice based on her own work in this area and her deep concern about the integration of land use planning and transit planning. And she wrote to me last night and spoke to me this morning to say she is delighted with the plan. She thinks you've found the right balance, the right intersection, that you've greatly strengthened the commitments in this area that she believed needed strengthening, and she urges the board to adopt it with her enthusiastic support. So that's a strong endorsement from someone who had to be brought quite a long way through your edits and her work and intersection, and so a very, very nice endorsement from Ann. Upcar, you're up first.
So Rob, I actually wanted to build on that and say, as Leslie would know from the first draft that I saw many, many months ago, where I was quite critical of that draft to where it is today, I think this RTP has done an excellent job of really balancing two key aspects. One is, I think I was frustrated at the lack of progress we were making in advancing it, but I think Leslie outlined that it was really important to get the level of community engagement with all the stakeholders having a very important role to play. And so I think we've done a good job of really trying to solicit that input and embedding that into the final plan. So I think that's a really good aspect of bringing that in, and it's really created a very robust plan. And then the second separation between the RTP and making it happen, I think balances really well that other tension, which is the RTP is aspirational, it's strategic, it's holistic, and it affects multiple stakeholders. But as you've heard, as we've heard, there's an anxiety and a desire to get things done. And so the translation of that to what are the specifics, what are the tactics, who's going to be at the table, and how we're going to get it done through that making it happen, I think is a really good balance between putting out there something that's widely embraced, but also having a plan to actually move forward on delivering specific tangible results. So I'm really pleased with the evolution and the status of the plan as it stands today.
Thank you, Upcar. You've been a major contributor to our work and repeated interactions with staff. Leslie, do you want to comment on anything that came out of Upcar's, or just say thank you?
Thank you.
Brian? And then Janet after Brian?
I, too, am very, very pleased with the final product. And I did have a question, though, and it arises only because of the interrelationship. And it was noted that we're dealing with more than just trains. We're dealing with transportation in this area. Another aspect of that breadth is what's a region? And we call this the Regional Transportation Plan. I'd like to focus on the R. Do we have the right R for this plan?
So in the context of all the other many tensions and pulls and pushes in developing the plan, there is what by legislation we're required to address in terms of the transportation plan, which is the Greater Toronto Hamilton area and the GO service area, which is sort of the threads outside of the GTHA, which is what we've addressed in this. There, in the conversation and the engagement, there was a lot of questioning about whether the Greater Golden Horseshoe is truly, from a mobility standpoint, the accurate geography. I think without stepping outside of our mandate and legislation, we have addressed it, and we want to have a further conversation, which is why it's identified in the Making It Happen paper as an item that requires more discourse. But I don't know if Antoine or Lisa want to add to that.
No, I think you captured it.
Thank you.
Janet?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Leslie and your team. Thank you very much for all your work on this. I know it's been a long process. Two quick comments and then two questions. I know some have said that what they were expecting from Metrolinx is like big vision. And I would argue that this particular plan is an incredibly big vision, and if we can deliver on it by 2041, it'll be phenomenal. So I don't think anybody who is concerned about it not being visionary enough. I think we've hit a lot of really good stuff going forward, and the comprehensiveness on the goods movement, I think is really, because that has to be part of it, and I was pleased to see how strong that was. Two quick questions. One of the regions that was very, very critical of our previous drafts was Durham Region, and they just didn't think that, for a whole series of reasons. And I see you've made some changes to try and accommodate that, but I just kind of wanted to get a little clear on what you've done to respond to that. And then secondly, One of the other criticisms that we've had in some of the earlier drafts is that it sounds very much like we're trying to be all things to all people and, we're going to be in charge of the kingdom. And I know that's not the intent, but when you look at things like we're going to develop the framework for passes for social, lower income, social assistance passes for lower income folks to access the transit system. And as a former social services minister, I was just sort of going, oh my God, like that's a very complex issue to wade into. So any sort of thoughts on how we're balancing that, sort of looking like we're trying to run everything, but at the same time, no, we're trying to consult and work with our other partners, but bring it under a comprehensive framework. It's not a very simple question. Sorry about that.
No.
On behalf of the regional chair of Durham, Roger Anderson, I'd like to thank the member from Durham for her question. Predictable.
I'm expecting the phone call tomorrow. So
predictable and valuable. So let's focus on Durham first, and then this broader question of how broad's our mandate as opposed to all the other institutions of government.
I'm actually going to ask Antoine to respond to the particulars of the Durham, because Durham did take time and to articulate their feedback. So do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we worked quite extensively over the last few years with Durham, and we continue to do so over the last few months. So we've had a number of interactions. There were a number of tweaks that they proposed to routing or the specific projects that we indeed made. They asked for clarifications on what we meant, for example, by BRT versus priority bus. We responded to that. They asked questions around our modeling assumptions, which we did as well. They were quite keen in having a potential future airport recognized, which we did. And they also had questions around how we portrayed potential future 407 transit ways. So we also clarified that, and especially our role vis-a-vis that of the province and especially MTO in delivering these services. We captured that feedback, as we did with all other municipal submissions in the GTHA, into a letter that is going out very shortly.
Do you know what Durham's level of satisfaction? Durham, in the form of the regional chair and his staff, will they be satisfied with what you've done, or will it fall short of what they were expecting from you?
I think we did our best to answer all their concerns, and I think the dialogue will continue as it does on a day-to-day basis. We have teams working very closely, for example, on the highway to BRT linking Durham to Toronto. So the consultation, the engagement are not punctual events. They're touch points that happen on a daily basis.
And on the Pickering Airport, what is the implication of your having acknowledged it now as opposed to I think we were silent on it in an earlier draft of the possibility of that airport emerging at some point? That's clearly not our decision in any sense, but if it does, I believe Chairman Anderson is concerned about transportation arrangements to serve that airport.
So we considered so we know where the airport would be, and we have contemplated this. A reminder as well that the shelf life of this plan, or it shouldn't be on a shelf, but the life of this plan is 10 years. So it guides our activities over the next 10 years. If and when an airport advances through the planning stages, it'll be a complex engagement with the province, but also the federal government.
So it does nothing that we've put in the plan precludes the possibility that someone might decide tomorrow that we need an airport, or that we're going to invest in an airport there. The document is a live document insofar as on the ground, we're at 70,000 feet at this, and on the ground things are happening every day that are changing and moving, but we've sort of set the frame. And, and we have lots of opportunity to kind of address it, I would say.
Can I add also that we looked at the region's growth projections and how they see growth playing out over the next 25 years, and we looked at what we had, and there is alignment there. So the assumptions about growth related to the airport, for example, we have alignment.
I'm not taking a position on the airport.
No, I'm just saying.
It's not for us to have a position on the airport. I'm just saying
it is addressed.
They have been concerned that if there's an airport, that we be open to the notion that it's going to require transportation to get people in and out of it,
yes.
and goods in and out of it, et cetera. And you're saying the plan is now can contemplate, nothing precludes that, and you could embrace it if other decision makers went that way.
And like many things in the plan, some things have a higher degree of certainty than others, so we sort of tend to weigh, and so we push things, in how, when something is a bit more in focus, then we're able to kind of address it more explicitly.
I've got Mary Ann and then Bonnie, but Bonnie,
the other part of the
oh, you're right, you got that. But are you on the airport point, Bonnie, or completely different? Okay.
Totally different.
Okay, so Janet, you had your second question, and then we'll go to Mary Ann, Bonnie, and Howard.
So with regards to the question around how we balance between the fact that this is a transportation plan, but of course, transportation is part of the ecosystem that is the region. I think we've taken the approach in this plan that the transportation and mobility is the center of gravity, but that we understand and appreciate that there are other systems, so the social services system or all those other pieces that have an influence, but we can't directly influence. So I think that's how we've that's how we've approached issues like things like thinking about equity issues around fares, for example. But I don't know if anyone else wants to add.
I mean, very briefly, we have an interest in seamlessness of the system, so making sure that the system is legible and understandable, and that people who are eligible for something in one part of the region, ultimately we aim to have that homogeneity, and as well our main preoccupation in the lens through which we put everything in the plan is access, enhancing access for people to give them access to opportunities, so education, jobs, et cetera, and that will remain our main preoccupation as we look into individual projects and how they're planned in advance.
I think two municipalities have taken steps in this area. Mississauga has recently, for example. So we're reflecting, in a sense, also what our stakeholders see as being part of the
So
transportation
for something like
plan.
that, our role is the identification of the issue and the convener to try and come up with a solution with all of the other people who actually have decision-making authority in some of those spaces.
That's
Exactly right. That's the
Correct.
space we're in. And I think it's important to get that space well understood.
Leslie, I have my eye on the clock. I've got 4 speakers, Mary Ann, Bonnie, Howard, and Kathy. So I'm going to suggest we take all 4 of their comments and questions, see if there are any overlaps, whatever, and I'm going to ask you and your team to respond, and then we'll see if we're ready to take the question. Mary Ann.
So mine can be very quick. You know what I'm going to ask about, because this is the written commitment that we're making for the next 10 years. I want to make sure that the design excellence component is embedded in the actions. And I've had a little correspondence with Leslie, and she suggested where to put it in with the 5 strategies, strategy number 3, and the Making It Happen document. And so I'm satisfied, given our correspondence in the last hour, that my expectations and
Excellent.
approval can be met.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank for staying with it. Bonnie.
I attended the Board of Trade session, and I thought it was fascinating that one of the closing comments and questions to the CEO was around, why don't you just get on with it? Haven't we done enough consultation? I was equally pleased with the CEO's response, which is you can never do too much. I felt a little bit reading this time that, you almost know it as a board member, because we've gone through it so many times as it's evolved and changed and shifted and so on. So I just want to really make 2 comments. One, congratulations for sticking with it, to getting to this final form of the document, because it's very hard as a board member to be highly critical, because we've had those opportunities along the way. So that's number 1. Number 2, there's an enormously rich section under the appendices. And I want to offer a compliment to that, because I was particularly fond of Appendix 5, because that addresses the issue of getting on with it extremely well. And so I hope when we're putting this out there, somehow for the user that goes in for the first time and downloads this and sees how big it is, that those appendices somehow can have life in another way and are still there, because that is the story. And then my final comment is just the Making It Happen paper. It does continue the conversation, which is fantastic, but it's a conversation around the plan, which is solid and there. And I'm really glad we're taking draft and final off, and it's just, this is the plan. So well done, and we won't lose this. This is great for the future.
Thanks, Bonnie. That's excellent. Howard.
So first, congratulations. Plan is good to go. I just wanted to ask a question. As you look to your big vision 2041, there has to be a big vision of how you will engage going forward, different from how you engage now. Obviously, because the growth, and so for seamlessness, for the expansion into the different regions, how will you evolve in terms of your interaction? In terms of trying to gain consensus with the other regional who have an input, with all the stakeholders. Is there anything you've succeeded so far? Congratulations. What would you do different and how will you go about it?
So that's in the, don't answer yet because we're going to take the fourth speaker and then you're going to do the wrap up. Kathy.
That's okay. My question is between Bonnie and Howard has been covered.
Great. So response to Howard and any closing comment, and then I'm going to ask that Upcar move the motion and that Janet second it. Oh, sorry, Rahul's got a question after. You better put it on the table because Leslie's going to.
It's just a comment.
Go ahead.
Just a real quick comment because I feel like one of the old timers was around the big move. So it's great to see the progress that's been made. You took a lot of consultation, a lot of feedback. You did the right thing with it. My comment is this, that when you see where we want to be in 2041, this is still very much a foundational piece. Right? And from an infrastructure standpoint. And some might even argue that this foundational piece is 20, 30 years too late. But it needs to get done, and this is a really good plan to get it done. What I want to make sure is that we also build in the operational and organizational muscle at Metrolinx itself to really get something done on Strategy 5. Because it's the rate of change that concerns me the most. Because the foundational nuts and bolts is something we can figure out, fair integration, last mile, the nuts and bolts of this. It's when I look at Strategy 5 and it's all those uncertainty pieces around climate change, autonomous, around seniors, like there's a whole lot of we don't know. And we're just building our, let's get it done, build Metrolinx, right? Yeah. We still need to be able to build that muscle that can adapt to that change. And I think that that's something we just don't want to lose sight of.
Point well made.
Okay. Thank you for the comment. So Leslie, a final comment on Howard's point, and then give it a wrap, and then Upcar is going to move the motion.
So first of all, actually, and it's inferred, but not maybe as clear, and to point out, in the Making It Happen document, we talk about several ways that we're going to continue to engage. In particular, the establishment of an intergovernmental forum to work with other levels of government at senior levels. Obviously, we work with them every day, but specifically focused on the 5 key areas that we identified in the Making It Happen and making that the agenda to bring people together. And so that's a formal process that we are embarking on. Second, we've learned.
Anchored in the strategic.
Yeah, it's anchored in the wheel. Number 10, thank you. And then secondly, I think we have learned so much in the engagement over the last year or 2 years. We're going to actually repeat some of the successes. So the resident reference panel was highly successful. We are exploring whether we should have what the equivalent of a standing residence reference panel or a rotating residence reference panel. And then there are a number of tables as well. In addition, there's a lot more analysis and research that we're going to have to do. So the work doesn't end here. It just sort of gives us another heavy ground, and then we're going to launch from that. So that's in response to that. In my closing remarks, first of all, I'd want to thank the team, thank the board. I particularly want to thank the planning leaders and the commissioners from across the region. They were instrumental in helping shape and ground the plan, so we know that when it's done, it's not just a bunch of words. They are actually going to use it. It's useful to them. They're probably going to be the most heavy users of the plan itself in terms of the policy direction. And finally, I think personally, I'd like to thank the board for their confidence in me. I recall an earlier board meeting where the chair questioned whether
Next point.
where the chair questioned, having done the first plan, whether it was in me to do the second plan. So I'm here to say, job done. Thank you very much.
Well done, Leslie.
As usual, I was wrong and you were right. The saga continues. Upcar, are you prepared to move that motion? Jen, are you prepared to second it? Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? I see none. Congratulations to the whole team. Nice job.
Thank you.
Really nice. That brings us to, Leslie, you better stay where you are. You're going to be joined by some colleagues, I think.
Yes, I'm going to be joined by Joshua Englian and Nadine Navarro, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
That'd be great. So this is the new stations business cases. This combines the second stage of business case analyses for the stations, and combines it and wraps into it the review we promised to do of the decisions of a year ago about Kirby and Lawrence East, and we've folded the two together in this report, and it delivers on both of those commitments. So Leslie, introductions, and then please take it. I'm unconscious I've already got us 12 minutes behind schedule. It's important. I don't want to skim over it, but we got to be a little more precise than we were in the last one.
So I will be short on the intro to the topic. I want to take the time to introduce and have Josh and Nadine introduce themselves, because they have been instrumental in getting us there, plus their teams, into where we are today. And
Sure. Hi, Josh Englian. I'm the Director of Research and Planning Analytics, which is the team doing a lot of the ridership forecasting, economic analysis, business case framework. I did get my master's in civil engineering at U of T, so.
And his undergrad.
It shows in this excellent report.
That's right. And Waterloo.
And Waterloo, thank you.
And Waterloo.
Yes.
I'm Nadine Navarro. I'm the manager of RER project planning, and our team looks at hub and station infrastructure across the network.
Sorry, say that again. I couldn't quite hear that.
I'm Nadine Navarro, a manager of RER project planning and planning and development, and our team focuses on hub and station planning across the network.
Tell people about where you're.
So I'm from McGill. I'm a civil engineer from McGill, and I did a master's at MIT.
Great. How do you want to go through this, Leslie?
So the material is in front of you. We have a short overview presentation that Josh is going to take you through, but just to remind everyone where we're at, this is in December, and Josh will explain a little more. The board consolidated our stage gate benefits management process, which identified how business cases progress through the life cycle of a project. The material in front of you, there's two types of material. One is the preliminary design business cases for 12 locations as part of the RER program, 5 that are initial business cases that have been updated since June 2016, and a brief update on where we are with the remaining 2 that you had asked us to address in 2016. So Josh?
Great. Thank you, Leslie. And I'll be as brief as possible, recognizing that there's a lot of material here that I want to, and we can get into a lot of specific questions afterwards. Antoine and the team were just talking about the RTP and access. And, you know, as we're looking at all these new stations and the updated business case analysis, I think it's important to recognize that this is really about leveraging the investment in GO expansion in RER to provide more riders and better access to people and jobs and education across the region. So Leslie already introduced what we're bringing forward, the 12 preliminary design business cases and the 5 updated initial business cases, and we will be bringing forward at a later date the 2 updated initial business cases for the other 2 locations, Walker's Line and Woodbine. This is just a map of the 17 locations that we're considering today. They're across 6 different municipalities in the region, and as part of all the work that the team has been doing since the fall on this updated analysis, we've reached out to all of these municipalities and received the most updated and current information in terms of population and employment forecasts, planned transportation, network improvements, things like that. And we want to thank the municipalities for all of their input. Just to orient you, this is the stage gate diagram that we brought forward in the December 2017 meeting in terms of where we are in the overall stage gate process. So those 12 stations that are in the preliminary design stage are shown there. There's a greater level of design, of cost certainty for those locations, and for most of them, the environmental assessments and public consultation have already been initiated. For the other 5 that were considered back in 2016, we have updated these initial business cases based on the latest GO RER operating assumptions. They're still at the station, I would say, early concept stage. So they haven't advanced to the same degree in terms of design as the other locations. And you can just see from a flow perspective, moving into the next stage is really the pre-RFP stage, the procurement preparation. And there is that one final decision point before moving towards full procurement. The other thing I'd just like to point out is as we move forward, we've been looking at these locations as, as individual projects, but as we move forward to the full business case, we will be bringing the stations that move forward as part of a full business case for the RER program, which will, like what came to the board in 2014 on the RER initial business case, allow you to see the full picture of the overall performance of the overall RER program with the stations as part of that. And just in terms of a very quick summary in terms of analysis and the business case approach, we're looking at costs and benefits of these investments over a 60-year life cycle, and each station generates benefits in terms of new riders into the system who might be shifting from driving or other modes, as well as people that now have a closer point of access or to their jobs or to where they're coming from. It also does provide, there also is a bit of a delay in terms of about a 2-minute delay to people who are already on the trains. And a small proportion of those people, as travel times increase, may choose not to use the system. So we do the math of comparing those benefits and impacts, and then compare the overall benefits to the life cycle costs of those stations to come up with the economic analysis, the benefit cost ratio. And this overall method for all of this work has been independently peer reviewed. The one thing I wanted to bring to your attention as part of this work in this next round of business cases is that we've been looking at ways to improve and optimize the overall network, and there's 3 system improvements that we see coming online over the life cycle of these new station investments that we've been considering in the modeling in this round. And just to highlight those quickly, because they all do have an important impact on station performance and generally in the positive direction. One is express service, which allows trains running for longer trips to not stop at some stations, which can reduce the delay that new stations may cause and provide a faster trip. And so express service for the modeling is assumed on all RER upgraded corridors, while still providing 15-minute or better service within the most heavily traveled sections of our network. The second piece is level boarding, which is providing step-free access at all of our stations so that the amount of time that a train has to stop and dwell at a station is reduced, because there isn't, you don't have to provide as much time for people getting down or onto the trains. It also provides much better accessibility. And then the third important piece is fare integration. And which is looking at how can we remove the fare barriers between GO and municipal operators. And in particular, from a modeling perspective, we didn't assume a particular fare scenario because this is all work underway in terms of fare integration. But from a modeling perspective, we really looked at how do we remove those fare barriers so that people are making the route that makes the most sense for their trip. They're not looking at the color of the bus or the train. And so just getting into some of the results, and I know you have this in front of you. I'm sorry if it's hard to see in terms of the table, but this is the table summarizing the overall business case results for the 12 that are in the preliminary design stage. You have the ridership there, the change in costs, the change in benefits from the IBC, and the overall relationship of benefits and costs. You notice that we haven't published individual station costs. That's because we're going to an open procurement. We don't want to be publishing our budgets from a commercial sensitivity perspective, but we have published them for the groupings of the 6 Smart Track stations and the other 6 GO stations. You'll notice just in terms of the trends, overall the cost.
Before we go into the trends, we've also made available the specific costs and benefits for Kirby and for Lawrence Kennedy, purely on the basis that those were 2 stations with contentious attention to them in the past. And in the spirit of transparency, we have weighed the importance of making that public as a higher priority rather than the commercial responsibility, the commercial objective of procuring a competitive bid. So that information is the public domain, I would say, and we will continue to clarify that in further sessions.
Great. So you'll see also that the costs have increased at most locations, and that's just reflecting a higher level of design, a higher level of knowledge about each of those locations, and property acquisition, utility relocation, track realignment, all those things that feed into the overall design and cost estimate. The benefits also in general have increased, and you'll see for the smart track stations overall, those 6 stations generate estimated overall benefits of $4.59 billion in benefits for a capital cost of $1.195 billion. And the other 6 GO stations generate a benefit of $2.12 billion for a cost of $910 million. In terms of the color shading and the benefit to costs, the darker green are the locations where you have a benefit greater than the cost, so it's a benefit cost ratio above 1. In particular, those are some of the locations which are serving existing or planned employment areas like your East Harbors and your Liberty Villages, as well as are providing important access points into the station, which is your Kirby's, your Innisfills, your Bradshaw's.
Why don't you just pause on this slide and explain MULOC? You've got 11 greens and 1 red, but the recommendation is that we keep going forward with the 12 plus the park lawn next step. Just explain why.
Yeah,
red keeps going forward in this context.
Happy to. So in the case of MULOC is located just between Aurora and Newmarket. And Aurora, in terms of the overall service plan for the Barrie corridor, is the terminus point of the 15-minute frequent service. So where MULOC sits in the network, if you're near MULOC, that 15-minute service at Aurora is generally more attractive. You can have a higher frequency versus a 30-minute service at MULOC. On the other hand, you're still far enough south on the overall corridor that you are incurring delays to all the folks from Barrie, Innisfil, all those other locations. So that's why you get to that negative benefits due to network impacts. Right. In terms of the recommendations for moving forward, it's really that, and this is the point about how each of these stations, so they're really part of an overall network, which is that as we advance the service concept for Barrie and the Barrie corridor, and we're looking at, the termination point of that 15-minute service, exactly, how that service plan works. If that service, depending on where that ends up in terms of the frequent service, would have a big impact on the performance of MULOC.
Changed, just hypothetically, changed so that the terminus for the 15 service was at MULOC or farther north, that would change the dynamics of this station.
Yes, very much so.
But if that doesn't change and nothing else changes, this station would be more doubtful at the next stage of your analysis at gate 3.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple points that I would highlight, because the municipality is just in the process of initiating an updated secondary plan for the area, which we've encouraged them to move as quickly as possible to get the best and most current land use information, which does have an impact. The other factor in the calculations is that Aurora is already quite a constrained station from a station access perspective. So there is
It might push people to.
That's right.
One other station. Got it.
That's right. But yeah, there is that next stage of analysis where it will be brought forward.
Keep driving.
Okay.
Or keep riding.
Yeah, I know there'll be lots of questions on individual stations, but I'll just keep moving.
Just go back, Josh, because there's another interesting principle of how the service pattern can affect Finch Kennedy, Lawrence Kennedy, Gerrard, as well as St. Clair Old Western, with a change in the service pattern that we'll be considering over the next 3 months on the Stouffville line. Yeah. Can you give that some context, because that will change the light greens quite significantly?
Yeah, I mean, as we look at what we can do to further increase services on the Stouffville corridor, that will create more connections. There's important TTC connections at many of those locations, so that will just create a better, quicker network. Will generate more riders for those station locations. So that's, as we talk about considering, and in the recommendations, continuing to look at these stations as we further look at policy, operational, and infrastructure pieces. That's one of the pieces, is how we would further improve service on the Stouffville corridor. Great. So this is the 12 that are in the preliminary design stage. We also have the table of the updated initial business cases, which were the 5 stations that were not approved at the June 2016 to move forward, but we've provided the updated analysis. And looking at these again, updating some of our operational assumptions. In particular, you can see that of the 5, the Park Lawn station is the one where the benefits now exceed the costs. There have been some design modifications to the station based on sort of the track operating patterns that have allowed us to reduce the overall costs. And we've also looked at how we could provide more of a split service between Mimico and Park Lawn, which versus the initial business case, which looked at one or the other. So with that, we've been able to optimize and look at how, and actually estimating a positive greater than 1 benefit cost ratio. So that's the main finding out of the 5 updated ones. And that takes us to our recommendations. So overall, the recommendation is to continue to advance the 12 station locations. Sorry, it's very
Here,
small.
I can read it. Continue to.
This is on page 323.
Yeah, this is the 12 new stations.
Sure. Sorry. To that, we continue the delivery of the 12 new stations identified in the June 26th board meeting, subject to further policy, infrastructure, and operating refinements. That staff advance the Park Lawn location to the next stage, to the preliminary design business case, and that staff be requested to continue to work with municipal officials to ensure that we have the most current policy and planning information.
That's it?
Mostly, I'm sure there's more to discuss, so.
That's it. Upcar.
So Leslie and Josh, can I just ask a couple questions? One is, I just want to make sure I understand that Park Lawn has not achieved the same level of advancement to the preliminary design business case as the first category of 12. That is correct, right?
That's correct. Park Lawn is still at the initial business case stage. It hasn't had the same level of design as the other 12. And I mean, the other thing to highlight for Park Lawn is it's not a funded station at this point.
And then the next question is, when I look at the 12 versus the 5, and I see of the stations on the second chart, the same comment as we have for MULOC, which are benefits are negative due to network impacts, the same comment that exists for MULOC. Am I correct in assuming that's a function of our filtering process, that we started with 120, went to 54, went to 19, and 12? Or is there, I'm just trying to understand the distinction between why is MULOC on the first list with that same notation versus, let's take an example, Ellesmere or St. Clair West or Highway 7, and why isn't White's Road on that first list?
So maybe I can extend, just if we remember the stages that Josh showed, there were 17 that came forward in June at the initial business case. And the board in June 2016 said, advance 12 of those 17. So 5 were sitting there. So we've been, all the work that's happening in RER has been progressing. Initial business case is, it's like a 1% level of design. We're now, we moved everything in the 12 to about a 10 to 12% level of design. The 5 that were not recommended to move forward, the level of design has not advanced. So what Josh and the team have done, rather than just say 12, keep looking forward, we thought it was the responsible thing to do, in that there are system-wide changes that were not there that we've now landed because more work is advanced in RER. Let's apply them to the 5 just to double check, to make sure there was nothing inherent in what we said in 2016 that doesn't apply. And what that work shows is that Park Lawn, because there's a lot of new things that have come on the table with Park Lawn, either from our elaboration of the system or the city itself advancing its land use planning, Park Lawn now. So we're saying our Park Lawn, on the basis of that, should move forward to the PDB, the preliminary design stage. So just to, does that help explain it? Yeah.
So then let me ask my question then, in terms of the overall question on the business case analysis, which is, I'm just trying to understand the robustness of the assumptions and drivers. Phil has highlighted we made 3 key changes, which were the express versus stopping at every station, level boarding, and fair integration. I just want to understand, so the robustness goes to the assumptions and understanding some of the risks in those. 2 questions. One is, are there anything from an assumption standpoint we should be aware of that we've kind of said, oh, let's just assume X for now, which could have a material impact on some of these conclusions? That's one. Are there some risks? Are there some risks we should be aware of? And then you said, Josh, I think you told us that it was third-party validated. Give us a sense of how much comfort we should derive in the methodology and the approach with that third-party validation, what kind of comfort that gives us in terms of their review.
Let me take the first question, and I'm going to ask Josh to take the second. We're very focused on the stations in this item. In the background of all of this, the whole organization is advancing the entire RER program, signaling, infrastructure, do we need layovers, divisions or sections, how are all the other components, and as we're progressing to procurement, things that were variables are starting to land, and we're starting to make decisions, and the scope of the whole system is starting to land. So the stations are now moving in pace with that, but there's still some remaining decisions that have to be made before we go. So we will be constantly updating the pieces that we have. And so yes, there are variables that we may have not addressed in 2016 that are what I call to the whole system, not explicit to stations. The things that are variables that are explicit, because level boarding is to the whole system, as is the service. The things that are specific to the stations are in the refinements that Nadine and her team have been doing with the municipalities on the actual site planning. The particular of number of bus bays and pick up and drop off, that gives us more specificity and less variability than where we had 2 years ago. So,
If I can pick up on a point that I think UPCAR is driving towards,
Yeah.
is there any fundamental, big, undoable, uncertain assumption underpinning the business cases that can render the analysis weakened? I mean, after all of the improvements we've made, is it fair to say that the biggest factor that we have that drives the business cases would be the land use policy density that municipalities have committed to? But except for that, in terms of the transit mechanics, do you think there's anything in there that's unquantified or with a significant risk assumption?
So just to confirm with Josh, the service plan is a really important piece. It drives a lot of what is enabled in terms of ridership and so forth. We're getting closer to landing that, and my but is, should we, in this process between now and the procurement, should anything change or shift, it could have an impact on these things, and this is why we keep an eye on it very closely.
But that's fully under our control.
Yeah, and that's in our control.
It's not a risk assumption of uncertainty.
It's not a risk in the sense of external risk, yes.
There's one other point that I would make there before getting to your second question, which is just the fare integration is a very important initiative, in particular within the City of Toronto and the City of Toronto stations, and the attractiveness of those stations in terms of being able to connect between TTC and GO. So I think that's another very important piece. From a methodology perspective and the peer review, we had Steer Davies Gleave, an independent consultant, review our process, look at a number of station examples, and provide their overall validation that it was fit for purpose. They've provided a number of recommendations for how we can continue to, which are all published, which we can to continue to iterate. There's always room for continuous improvement, which is what we're trying to do. But it just in terms of the overall, now with this round, all of the new station analysis is fully assessed through a network model. So all other improvements in the transit network are considered. We have the best and most current land use information, local transit network assumptions. So there's really been a lot of work to have the most valid and up-to-date assumptions. We'll always be looking at how we improve. We have our business case guidance and how we'll be improving using the most recent research on our economic assumptions as well.
So can I conclude it's strong evidence base with up-to-date information using a methodology that is best practice and validated, and there's nothing material that could come up that would materially, other than the ones we've talked about, affect the preliminary conclusions from these numbers?
Correct.
Okay. I've got Brian and then Bonnie.
I think on my fundamental question, I think UPCAR has asked it, but I'll ask it again just to make sure I've got it right. I mean, the reality is you're dealing in a really dynamic environment, lots of moving parts. we're going to have to put the pin in someday. So my bottom line question is, when do we have to make that final decision on any or all of these? But let me park that for the moment and just go back to the fact that since December, we've had these three, we called them key advancements, you know, the express service, taking into consideration express service, level boarding, and fare integration. I think, Upkar, your question was, are there any more things like that coming down the pipe? So I just wanted to confirm that the answer to that is no. The remaining variables are the things like land use planning information and so on. So how long have we got before we have to finally say this is it?
Well, I'm looking to my colleague, Chief Capital Officer Peter Zook. We are, as has been presented to the board, the RER program will go to market RFP at the end of this year. But Peter can fill, and that's when we have to land, because we have to say what is it we want to get built. So I don't know if Peter wants to add any more to.
What's the date for finalizing the procurement document for stations?
So RFQ during this month, early next month. RFP later in the year, after the in the fall. There is a plan not yet fully developed for all of the stations to go out at the same time in 3 packages. That may be adjusted to a higher number of packages as we go forward. But what we will adjust is the procurement period for each of those. We will put them out together at the same time. We think there's market capacity to do that.
So circa October?
Circa October.
We have to finalize the decisions as to what goes in that procurement, whether it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 packages.
And we can adjust on stations slightly differently than RER itself because it's not in lockstep with the train service aspects of the DBFOM.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, then Kathy.
I just wanted to pick up on a Joshua comment about the fare integration and make sure I've got that one pillar that we're now applying right. So the assumption is we remove all barriers to fares, and that has had, when you've then done the analysis, it's had a positive impact on virtually all the business cases. So when we saw the first fare integration piece go through, it was a shift of cost to the province and a subsidization that was required to take that first step. We've got a couple more in the pipeline. So there are costs of fare integration. How do they get truthfully, authentically considered in these cases when we know there is a path of cost ahead to fare integration? I don't know if I've been very clear with that, but.
I think I'll take that one. So when you look at fare integration and the preliminary work that we have done on fare integration has shown that we have a benefit cost ratio of fare integration, economic benefits to cost to incur of between 10 and 12. So let's just figure out what that means. If government spends on a net present value over a 60-year timeline, 100 million on fare integration, and let's say any part of government, the benefit is between 1 and 1.2 billion. So it's a 10 times benefit to cost ratio. And so when we make an assumption to simulate what the benefits are, it is economic benefits for everyone. Which pocket the money comes from is not part of the business case analysis. And I think that's how it should be. Now, there are tactical choices and strategic choices that will have to be made in terms of where is the funding going to come from? When is the funding going to be made available? But for the purposes of looking at economic benefits in the case, we are looking at it, what is the community benefit from the overall investment?
Okay, so I get that, and now we move to October and a decision. And clearly the decision about who pays what when is some point down line. But those very decisions that fare integration has had positive benefits is built into the decision to move in October. So do we get a sensitivity analysis or something that would say?
So where we would be is that when we make the choices by the end of this year, it'll be on the assumption of fair integration, because the business cases are predicated on a 60-year asset life.
Right, okay.
But it's not really a 60-year asset life, it's a 250-year asset life once we build this station. So, but on a 60-year asset life, we are saying somewhere in the next 60 years, we expect fair integration. Now, please don't quote me in that corner, because I didn't say 60 years for fair integration. I said we'll get to fair integration much quicker than
We're
that.
looking for 6 weeks, not 60 years. Dog years.
So where we are aiming towards, therefore, is the build period will be 2.5, 3 years or whatever, and in the next 2.5 years, we have a very active program to get fair integration onto a different footing.
I've got Kathy and then Howard, and then I'm going to see where we are.
I just want to reinforce that I'm back on the business case life cycle, the stage gating process that we're following. And I just want to, I guess, emphasize as a board member, my expectation that we will have discussions and decisions that change over these stagings. Now that sounds obvious, but it may not be. I mean, the worst case scenario is that you go into a feasibility and you land on a position and then you become so biased you don't change your position. These are refinements of decision making, and so I'm pleased to see that as we move through these gates, we're dealing with new information, better information, and potentially different outcome. So we're only at the preliminary design stage on these. I would expect that we're going to have another robust discussion. And from the conversation, I think it sounds like we are going to have the appropriate next level of detail for the decision making that to, I think, Brian's point, yeah, we'll have to put a pin in the ground. But I would be quite concerned if we weren't seeing some shifting in the decision making through these stage gates. That's the purpose of the stage gates. So I just felt I needed to reiterate that.
Josh spoke about the full RER business case. We will be bringing that to the board before you go to full procurement.
Yeah, good.
Rob, could I just follow up on something?
Well, we're getting really behind, okay, just so it's going to be
Just one thing, because it's bothering me a little bit. So Brian used the phraseology, we're not going to have any more than the 3 we've seen, the level step off on fair integration, et cetera. In actual fact, wouldn't it be a good thing if when you get to the final case you bring forward, there may be other than the 3 that actually support the business case? It's not a negative that there'd be more. It could be that you discover something that if you just did ABC or DEF, it would make the case even better in certain areas, might not in others, but it might in some. So
That's accurate. And sort of the work that we're doing on the service plan, which I prompted Josh to talk a little bit on the Stover line, is a classic number 4 in the list.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I just wanted. I thought, whoa, we don't want to close it off, we want to open it.
Yeah.
We try to say in business cases on stations, if there are typically sort of 4 or 5 big levers to pull, and we've got those 5 levers fully visible, and we're pulling them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Howard, you got the last innings before we test the board.
Right, so just on the, I understand the fair integration as a possible blockage in some way, but is there anything from TTC's point of view that may happen that somehow will impact what we do?
I'm sure lots could happen at TTC. The good news is we have a very robust collaborative working relationship with TTC, in particular on the FAIR file. They have been a great partner with us in advancing fair integration. So I don't know every and anything that the TTC would predict. I can't, but I see that.
But they've bought into, they've seen our plan.
Yes, most definitely. Yes.
Okay.
As well as the city planners, and the city is very tied into this work. We failed to mention that, but on the Smart Track work, we've spent a lot of time with the modeling folks, the planning folks, the city manager's office. It's a very tight conversation.
Okay.
Leslie, just want to make last question. We're making this documentation public.
It is public.
We are made public the costs on the Kirby and Lawrence East Station, despite the potential prejudice to procurement because of the need for complete transparency. Some people have been saying, can I see more of the data behind the likely footfall, the demand, that material that's not in the report, on which the report is based? but is not there. Do you have any material in a form that makes it publicly digestible or could you put out that information about ridership projections and the model you're using to project this that lies behind the assumptions that are then recorded in your technical paper?
So what I would offer...
Can we go further,
Yeah,
is
so
my
what I would
question.
offer is, in the same way when we did the RTP, we did a technical paper on the model, how the model works, what the assumptions are. We're happy to do a similar piece for this. The model is very similar. Obviously, it's at a different scale, but happy to share that.
And supporting a technical
Yeah,
paper
yeah.
is we have offered to some of the media outlets, and we've had a technical briefing, and I think there's no harm in having a follow-up technical
Yep.
briefing as well after
Yep.
we can see what questions have emerged over the last week and a
Yeah,
half.
happy to do
Just
that.
to be clear, we've published the appendix, haven't we?
Yes.
With 100-odd pages with
Yep.
more detailed description for each of the 12,
Yeah, this doc-
each of the
yeah, this-
17 stations, isn't
Yeah,
it? So
yeah.
there's quite a lot of information in the public domain very transparently already that do talk about quite a lot.
And just one footnote is to remind the board that the board asked us to make sure that business case material get posted well ahead of board decisions, which we have done that. This was posted prior to even the board materials being posted.
Thank you very much. So if you could undertake to do that and combine it with another technical briefing, if anybody wants one, once the material is available, that would be very good. On page 323 of your diligent is the recommendation. It's also on the screen. Who would like the honor of testing this issue by moving it? Marianne is going to move it. Rose has seconded it. Does anybody wish? You've done a really good job on this. Okay, I know it's a lot of work, and I asked you to look at 2 stations, and you said you did the whole darn thing over again, and you've done an excellent piece of work, and we appreciate it very much. Does anybody have any further questions? Does anybody have any concerns they want to articulate before we test the motion? I see none. All in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Good job. That brings us to tab 9, which is control of our capital programs.
Thank you, guys. Well done.
Yep.
Yeah, very well done.
Peter, we allocated you 30 minutes, but I've used up time on other matters, so you're now allocated 18 minutes.
So my team is coming to the table right now, and I'm going to show you as a team how we can briskly move through a trilogy of presentations on aspects of the strategic plan. And if with your permission, Mr. Chair, we're going to stand at the table so we don't have people coming up and down, and I promise it'll be fast. Team close to the table.
Why don't you sit down?
Sit down.
There's a lot of us.
That's all right.
So let's sit down.
There are more chairs at the other end if you want some.
Okay. Everybody sitting down.
Everybody sitting up. Some people take the other end of the table.
That's easier for me.
No agenda. We're going to have to skip the 1 minute
It's a
introduction.
little heavy on the guys, but
Like standing next to you.
just before we start, Peter. Yes. Marianne, Bonnie, I'd like to get us started. I'd just like to, Peter's going to lead this, but I'd like to introduce Aaron Corey. I know others are going to be introduced in the course of the presentation. Aaron is the President CEO of Infrastructure Ontario, our full partner in all that we're doing in this area, as you'll hear. But I do want to acknowledge that Aaron has been helping us with his team hugely on all sorts of matters we're dealing with, and has become an integral part of our team, and is a wonderful partner of Metrolinx. So Aaron, to you, and through you to all your team, we really appreciate the partnership.
Phil, would you like to kind of introduce how the partnership came about since you and Aaron were there?
We'll do that very quickly, and I just want to personally say that Aaron's leadership in IO is phenomenal, and the direction he set to work with us shoulder to shoulder as an integrated team is fantastic. And at this, and in the presentation, there'll be more clarity on that. And at this opportunity, Derek, just wave your hands, please. Derek is a key player in IO in Aaron's team, and Derek is fully integrated in our team. And Charles van Hickek, wave again, Charles there. Charles van Hickek has the dubious distinction of being a fellow South African like myself. and Charles leads our procurement on the on-corridor works. Charles also a senior leader in IO. So just say welcome to IO. It's fantastic to have you guys on board with us.
Thank you.
Chair, this is the first of a trilogy of related presentations. First, I'd like to kind of center us on where we are today. Yesterday, Phil and I talked to AFARM about getting better control of our capital programs and getting better production of our capital programs. And in the same way that Phil at the Board of Trade tried to make sexy tunnels, we're going to try to make sexy project controls here today. Yeah. Because controlling our capital programs is extremely important. But today's meeting has kind of illustrated, it's a good place for us to center what this is about, because a large capital program like our RER and Rapid Transit program provides the opportunity for some of the things we've heard about this morning. Excellent design, new stations, it's a vision. And we need to embrace that vision and us be about incorporating those excellent elements and delivering on that vision. That vision is part of $5.53 billion in capital expenditure planned for the next fiscal year. And I'm going to introduce this. Each of the delivery leaders is going to just tell you a bit about their program, beginning with Tom Budd, who is delivering on extensions.
Yes, the extensions are the Bowmanville extension, the Niagara extension, and the western part of the Kitchener program, which includes the freight bypass. Those are the three extensions, and then the other thing that's...
You got a lot to do.
And the other thing that falls under my portfolio too is state of good repair maintenance, and how that's going to develop through the pre-AFP period and then the post-AFP period.
Carla Avis-Birch is going to tell us about stations.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. My portfolio includes the new stations, 6 of which are RER Go stations and 6 are the Smart Track stations, part of the work that Josh spoke to just recently. The Smart Track stations, of course, we're delivering in partnership with the City of Toronto. My portfolio also includes major renovations at some of our existing stations that are not covered off in the early works portfolio.
Nick Spencieri is going to talk to us about his portfolio of early works, which are non-AFP.
Good morning, and thank you. Yeah, the program is system-wide, and it includes approximately about $3.5 billion worth of work. It's an enabling works, and we're undertaking this ahead of the design, build, finance, operate, maintain package as enabling to get rid of risk and make sure that we're moving forward in a good way when the design, build package goes out.
Just for the benefit of the board, guys,
yes.
You are the delivery team, and how do you work with the sponsors and the sponsors that help set up your programs?
Well, we're obviously the sponsors are the key now to putting the packages together for us. They're clearinghouse. They're the ones that organize us and make sure that we have the right scope, we have the right schedule, we have the right the budget, and they make sure that all of the stakeholders are feeding into that project so that we are going forward in a proper way.
Thanks.
Okay, AFP Early Works. Stephanie is going to speak to?
Andre actually is.
I'm sorry, Andre.
Yeah.
You're here, Andre. Yeah. Sorry.
$1 billion.
Stephanie Davies is going to talk to Rapid Transit, both bus and
Yes. Yeah,
trains.
I'm here representing Jerry Chaput, the Vice President of Rapid Transit today. And the Rapid Transit program consists of 4 LRT projects, which I think the board is well familiar with, as well as 2 BRTs, being the Viva Next and Mississauga Transitway, as well as other discrete bus improvements throughout the region, all connecting communities and to a total price tag of $16 billion over the coming years.
Last but not least, Charles Van Niekerk to speak to the DBFOM.
So the DBFOM stands for Design, Build, Finance, Operate and Maintain, and it's essentially the final piece in the puzzle to make all-day two-way service possible. Our program will build everything that's remaining after my colleagues has built their works in the early and enabling works and with the stations. including civil and track, signaling, electrification, buying the new vehicles, and then maintaining and operating the system in the long term.
Stephanie will briefly tell us the 7 big changes that are going to bring about better production and control of our programs.
Absolutely. So as Phil mentioned earlier, most notably is the integration of Metrolinx and IO into a consolidated and powerful delivery team. That will include empowering our people and investing and supporting our resources. We're doing that through a robust change management plan, which is focusing on what's happening today throughout these changes, but will also focus on the coming 13 months. And ensuring that we have engaged appropriately with our employees and are setting ourselves up for success. On a tactical basis, we've been undertaking 6-week RER strategy reviews over the last few months, and as well as robust reporting with respect to cost, scope, schedule, and risk on a monthly basis. All of this is supported through our newly established PMOs, which are embedded within the integrated delivery teams that have been established, and a robust program management plan, which is under development and will be talked about shortly.
The core of this is the Metrolinx IO team. Aaron, would you like to introduce this and then kick it over to Derek?
Sure. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Rob and Phil, for the kind words. You get to do the return engagement with our board in a few weeks, so thank you. Both of our organizations have a rich history of delivering capital projects. Metrolinx has every year manages billions of dollars of capital investment. IO also, 15 years ago, we were created to help be the province's center of excellence around large infrastructure investments across sectors. And we've done 100 projects now, just over 100 that have come to market. 60 of those are in operation. We've done a half dozen of those 100 with Metrolinx. So we also have a rich history of working together over the past 5 or 6 years. And that's been great. We've learned a lot along that way. And projects like the CROSSTOWN, which are deep into construction now, have been real successes. As we've gotten into RER, though, the scale, the complexity, the level of integration has required us to think about how to work together differently. It's not just a project anymore. Eglinton Crosstown, we could do it in a certain way. 2 organizations, it was a project, we put some people together and made it work. But that wasn't going to work at something of this scale and complexity. So I've been the CEO at IO for 1 year now. When Phil arrived, he and I, one of our very first conversations, maybe even before technically arriving, but when you had the phone where we could start bothering you across the pond, was around how our teams needed to find a new way of working together that was going to truly reflect the level of integration and complexity. This page you can see on the screen, which Derek will talk to in very small point font, reflects the reality we face, which is this is a big, complex program that requires a lot of people working in harmony. It requires the best of both of our organizations and the best of the industry, the market, the consultants that we bring in, and how do we integrate all of that into one team has been our obsession since over the last 4 or 5 months.
Great. So thank you, Aaron. Maybe I'll take it over from there. So as Aaron said, what you're seeing in front of you in kind of very small font is kind of the demonstration of what an integrated program team looks like. What we're trying to do in here is demonstrate that we have an organization that's aligning the functions of both organizations. So if you look at the little Venn diagram to the left-hand side, you're seeing the strengths of each one of the organizations, including our consulting groups, coming together to kind of create the right-hand side, which is the functional chart. What you're seeing there is actually a delivery based on program and packages of work. So one of the key things that you're seeing in here is a very much more flattened organization that empowers that top tier of individuals to actually lead and be accountable for the projects that they've been given, or the programs that they've been given. So as it's shown on here, the actual team is comprised of a combination of both Metrolinx, IO, and the consultant groups that are working with us to actually deliver these projects. One of the things that you'll also hear or have heard is that the teams are going to begin to get co-located. And what that does is it creates an environment for collaboration to occur, to get that tighter alignment between the organizations, and to actually deliver on the projects that have been provided to them. So again, one of the things that we're trying to do is to kind of build that diversity through that collaboration, to build that diversity, to allow for that kind of that opportunity for thoughts and ideas to kind of occur, to come together to better deliver these projects. So again, one of the things that we're doing is we're focusing on a very lean, flattened and agile type of structure, and through a committed delivery, through the commitment of delivery of a clear process and procedures, we're going to deliver significant value for the taxpayers. Thank you.
So in addition to procedures, this is about people. And in the same way that the program provides an opportunity for design excellence and integrated art, it also provides the opportunity for a center of excellence in developing our people. And with this program, we'll be introducing a program of program management, asset management, professional improvement, to be briefed on some other day. You've seen the slides here in your package. I'm going to hurry us up a bit by going to this single slide to talk about the sexy subject of program controls, and ask for Lisa to walk us through this slide before we conclude.
Certainly. So in order to successfully deliver $43 billion worth of infrastructure over the course of the next 7 or so years, we need to have the appropriate controls of each subsidiary project. To do that, we have strengthened the taking stock report that y'all saw last year at this time. It's now data-driven, KPI-focused, and it will ultimately provide stats on each and every project within CPG purview. This status is then validated at monthly all-day meetings that Derek and Peter lead, where risks and issues can be raised and managed. Also, we are another way we are keeping our teams informed and supporting good project management is by finalizing our integrated master schedule and standing up project management offices, as we talked about before, supporting each of the delivery teams with experienced staff that are using best practices.
Lisa, just stop there for a moment. So at some of the board subcommittees, we have had that really good challenge about where does everything locate itself in an integrated schedule, especially at the board exec committee meetings, when we go through the approval cycle of projects that are coming up. That question has surfaced a couple of times. And what Lisa and the project team has done is to calibrate all of the programs that we've got in flight, which is around 653 programs, and where do they all fit and how do they sequence. So that has been an exercise, a really important one to finalize, and in the months to come, the board will see more visibility of that.
And I think another aspect, particularly with regard to Lisa, is we've adjusted our organization to have Lisa having a reporting relationship to the finance group, which is an additional safeguard in the financial management of our programs. Lisa, if you could walk us through briefly the program management plan side, we then conclude and take questions.
Certainly. Finally, the electronic project management plan or program management plan is yet another way of aligning our teams and informing all staff, whether it's consultants, Infrastructure Ontario, or Metrolinx staff, about what we are delivering, our ways of working, the tools and resources that we are providing, and the processes required, as well as how each of the teams will be delivering their projects.
So we talked to you about this program before, and we talked about what's changing, what we're going to do differently in the capital program. But there is something that remains the same, and Greg is going to talk about that, and that is that we are essentially an organization that delivers services to our customers through an outsourced model. So we're doing a lot more, bigger and better, but it really is still the core of what we do. So with that, I take your questions before flipping this to Greg for his presentation. We would take your questions.
Thank you very much to all of you. This is a very fast overview of what everybody's doing, just to forward and through the board, a public sense of confidence that we've got the resources and the team we need to deliver on this. So thank you for all you're doing. It's a huge undertaking, but it's worthy of you because this is doing stuff for the generations. So this is really, really important, meaningful work, purposeful work. Howard.
Thanks. Just one question. So two organizations, two different cultures have come together in a way to create a solution. So you come with different tools, different database. So whose numbers do you trust? You know, do you run separate, for example, do you run separate databases and combine them and rationalize what's real, what's not real? You know, who manages the data, and who manages the integrity of the data?
I think Derek and I should take that. It's our data. We're going to manage as an integrated team.
Okay.
This is not treading new ground. Integrated teams have been a proven method in many large infrastructure projects. The trick of this is truly integrating so that we have one set of numbers, and it's the numbers that we all trust, a single source of truth, if you will. Derek, would you like to embellish or speak to that?
So we've already commenced with Lisa's help and our other colleagues, Jacobs, to begin to kind of figure out how we can begin to take the various kind of files, the various data from each one of the organizations and merge them in together. So I'm in complete alignment with Peter. It is one set of documentation that will come out of this that will explain to both IO and to Metrolinx organization what the status of the project is, where we are with the project at any one particular time.
Right, so that's good. So fundamentally, you're comfortable with the tools in place right now to deliver the data that you need.
I think it's an improvement because before we had two sets of everything.
Okay.
And two sets of everything leads to conflict. And we an enormous amount of conflict, and when I say conflict, not fighting, conflict in terms of point of view. But in integrating our team, that conflict comes out of the system, and we have people working on the same plan to the same purpose.
Yeah. That includes the integrated schedule.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other question? I was going to ask you, Marianne, if you might put to Peter the question you were sent to me and to Phil about your issues about design through all of this.
With apologies to the rest of the board because they know what I'm going to ask you, but I think, just first of all to say this is a very exciting initiative because I'm an architect who have worked on IO projects and, it can be, large integrated projects don't always permeate design quality. So they get the thing built, they try on schedule, on budget, but because there are two sets of architectural initiatives, there may be a reference design and then it goes to PSOS, big documents that are trying to describe design quality. That doesn't really work. And then it gets handed over to design build DBFM team where the design component drops to the bottom and it's all about delivering on time and on project, which is what on time and on budget, which is what IO should be good about. So I've been advocating that Metrolinx be the component of this relationship that represents the design right through the project, and that means right through all aspects of this, through procurement, through site, through shop drawings, and that it not get handed over and then diminished. And so I think, this is a great new experiment, but it has to have that kind of, design has to have that kind of support through every level of the, so I would just ask you that.
So I always look at my partner Leslie before I answer one of these questions to make sure I'm giving the right answer. But the view here would be, once again, a single point of view because both Metrolinx and IO and now the Metrolinx IO team have had experience with trying to integrate art into their projects, and they are bringing to us their stories of lessons learned in those projects. So the plan here is to blend this with the introduction of the design team which is housed at Metrolinx, but is the Metrolinx IO team. We expect that will be fully integrated. We are talking about the ways that we can enhance the view at each step in the process for both traditional and AFP design. So we're not overconfident, but we are, working with the things that you've given us to work on. We're working on very, very hard.
If I can just support that. So the role of sponsors to be the custodians of the business case and the objectives of a program is crucial. Design excellence captures what is important to customers and what's important to how the program is delivered and what it looks like in the end. And that's part of the fundamental objectives of the program. And so through each of the gated stages of approval, which we've showed earlier today, sponsors will be the hosts, and sponsors will make sure that when you get to a gate, and it must be signed off before it goes to the next stage, that design excellence, which previously was distributed through the organization, is now under a vice president and a heading, and owns the strategy for design excellence, signs off at the gate. So sponsors won't take business cases through any of the gates till all of the parties have signed off. But design excellence is just one party there. So there's many parts of the organization that must sign off. So must operations sign off, that the operation integrity. So must asset management sign off, that the asset management sign off. So everyone must sign off. So design excellence is a critical part, but it's one of the cogs in the bigger structure.
Yeah.
And by having that structured approach was part of our philosophy of creating a vice president and a dedicated team, instead of having design excellence hidden in the organization, distributed and fragmented throughout the organization. So I think what we are doing, working with I/O, is a big step forward, but the whole strategy of reorganizing, planning and development, give that accountability for sponsors and have that structured, gated process is what makes our program so much more powerful going forward, and our delivery of this more powerful.
And I would say the Eglinton Crosstown has been an exceptional opportunity, which somehow we, were able to advocate for. And so I would say the lessons learned from that, because it's not perfect, but, I think, a huge step forward, and I think it's led to this integration. So
it's been the proving ground of those principles.
Yeah, it may not be perfect, but well.
Yeah.
Phil, if I may, I would just finish by saying design build, by its definition, it does change the way that you interact, as you know well, with the architecture community and with the design. And I think if we want to do design excellence, in addition to everything Phil said, the two things we have to get right is, number one, do a really good job of articulating upfront what our principles are, what we value and care about, as we put, because you can get through design build beautiful building, beautiful projects. Crosstown had success in this. New Toronto Court, a project we're recently working on, I think is going to be a stunning building achieved through this model. And I think the two things we got right in those situations, Eglinton and New Toronto Court, is a really good job of articulating what we mean by design excellence, our principles, what we're looking for, number one, and then all the way through the process, really good engagement of the experts in that. So in the New Toronto Court example, having our client, our partners from MAG working with us all the way through. Crosstown, that is what worked well with us, I think, with Metrolinx. So that's what we need to do on RER as well, so that we're giving bidders good feedback, that they're constantly meeting our standard of excellence.
And we achieve that. Our strategy to achieve that is with having that dedicated team led by a very senior vice president in our organization.
I'm very hopeful, and I think this is a huge step forward, and I would love to see it not be, because in design build, the design gets beat up by the build and the finance component. So it's never had that level of authority. It says DBFM, but skill tips dramatically when you run out of time and money. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to just say thank you very much. Carry on.
Thank you.
Great work.
Team.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Aaron.
Just as we're moving to the next item, while the next team comes up, I want to report that I received some more correspondence. I want to report I received some more correspondence this morning. John McKenzie, writing on behalf of, let me get this right, the TRCA, the Conservation Authority, has written very supportive of the regional transportation plan, but wanting to get on with the climate strategy as well, and saying they wish to engage, Leslie, with you and your team on that. And so I'm tabling that correspondence too, and we'll post that correspondence. It just came in the last few minutes. The next item on the agenda is the operational excellence team. Greg, I did a terrible job of managing Peter and the team. Your team's smaller, so I'm going to be more insistent that we stay closer to the time here. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We will do an express presentation.
Perfect.
I want to introduce operational excellence, and may I maybe highlight what's obvious is that Leslie's team did a great presentation on key planning components, moves into build, moves into operations. The closer is Mary Proc, because none of this makes sense unless you actually drive revenue into the business. So we are one step away from you and lunch, so we will go as quickly as we can. The key is you've heard often about the strategic wheel, the 15 corporate objectives. The operations team leads 4 out of the 15, but suffice to say that it's the entire S&T team and the entire corporation that really co-owns all of the 15, without which none of this will get done. But each needs a leader. The 4 that we have, safety, which you've heard about already, service improvements, which we're going to talk about today, RER business transformation, which is a really major sort of enabler of all of the other 14, and then a real key driver on cost containment and is lean culture. You'll hear a bit of that today, but we'll talk more about that when we're invited back later. I will let my team introduce themselves as they speak. We're actually not going to have George speak in this one because he has spoken and has had much profile in the last few days on the safety piece, as it should. And the good-looking guy on my right, Darryl Brown, we'll hopefully get him back to talk about the RER business transformation, which is a phenomenal piece of work we're advancing. So I'm going to hand off to Andre Lalonde, our rookie VP Transit Operations, in the job about a week.
Thank you, Greg. And
Welcome aboard.
yeah, Jesselyn's going to start off, but I think we just want to emphasize that we're here to talk to you a bit about number 15, but we have to look at it holistically, and we won't be able to speak about it in isolation without referring to other areas.
So good morning. My name is Jesselyn Selby. I'm the Director of Customer Care here at Metrolinx, and I'm here to talk about how we have really 3 related priorities. One of them, as you've heard about, is we are going to start to have unprecedented construction on all of our rail lines. And while we're doing that, we're actually going to start adding more and more trips onto those exact same rail lines. And at the exact same time, we're going to try and focus on how to improve the customer satisfaction of the customers on those trips. And we're going to do that all at the same time. Right now, we've already started increasing our service. In January, we started adding additional trips, and we are on our way to move from 1,800 trips per week up to 2,250 trips. That's a 25% increase in options for our customers who want to take transit across our region. We're going to need to do that, but still focus on our on-time performance while we're doing that, because we know a key element of customers is they want to take our trips, but they want to get to where they're going on time. Be it that if they're going home to their families, going to the office, or going to the next Raptors game, they want to be on time. On-time performance last year was going quite well until we got to some extreme weather conditions in December and January, and as you can see on the graphs, we fell below our performance target of 94%. What happened in February, there were a number of focuses, a number of initiatives that were taken, and we were able to increase our performance back up, and it doesn't show on the graph, but I'm here to tell you we actually hit our 94% target in February. Andre's going to talk a little bit later about a number of the operational excellence works that's going on right now that's going to really help us to make sure that that becomes our norm. We are always going to be hitting our target going forward. In spring of 2016, so a while ago, GO Transit achieved an 84% customer satisfaction. I could be wrong, Mary can correct me, but I believe that's the highest we ever achieved. Results have gone up and down a little bit since then, and in the fall of 2017, we had dipped down to 77%. While I think that's important to know that it did go down, it's important to also remember that 92% of our customers still say that they will continue to use our services, and that 78% of them actually recommend us to their friends and their family. And personally, I just think that means a lot, because I don't recommend anything. I don't put my brand behind it unless I really believe in it. So we have a very strong connection with our customers. Next slide. So what are our key drivers to improving our customer satisfaction? We know through the in-depth research that we do here, there are really 3 components to that, and that is reliability, customer communications, and comfort. The work block team here is working diligently to try and ensure that we can develop schedules that our trains can meet while we're still having construction. Customers, what we found out is customers actually are okay with us changing the schedule a little bit to accommodate schedules, like on a late Sunday night, but whatever we establish, we need to meet them. You know, it's do what you say you're going to do. So we have found that there has been actually some real positive interaction with our customers there. Well, satisfaction with our customer comms has increased in the last few years. We've actually taken it from about a 54% to 71% last year. We know we still have long ways to go. And I really believe, and my team's been doing a lot of research around the world on how other companies do these type of service, how we update service status information. We know what we need to do is really be able to have an engagement with our customers around service status. What we're going to do is try to make it much more personal, much more individual, much more custom to make it more exciting and wow. I'll share one story that happened. Actually, I think, Phil, you were away for this, but we actually had a train that got delayed on the Barrie line back in January because a car got stuck on the track. So one of the things we did was we sent out our normal tweet that said trains are delayed, and that was it. A few minutes later, we followed up actually with a picture of the car on the tracks. And it was amazing, the social reaction to it. We had people retweeting it. We had people making comments. They were making jokes about it, adding memes about it. And they were really actually very supportive of Go Transit because they became part of it. And it was a great showing of where that wow, exciting communications can take us. But it's not just about service communication, it's also about how are we going to share all different types of service. I've been in customer service my whole career, and things have changed from just being able to have a contact center to answer questions. Being able to have digital signs, web chat, social media interactions, being able to have SMS texting, all of those things that all generations of our customers want to have for communications is key. Next year, we're going to be enabling communication on digital signs. We're going to be enhancing them. We've already started this year, but we'll continue that. We're going to start providing real-time next bus information, which is key to that 20% of our customer base. And I'm really pleased that today I can tell you that tomorrow morning we're going to be launching our new Go Transit website. If you're not doing anything around 3:30 in the morning, it should be there. So the site has been co-created with customers, which is why I feel very strong that it's going to be very received well by customers. Hundreds of customers have gone through our agencies, working with us, giving us feedback on what works, what doesn't work, and it actually turned out very different than we thought it was going to at the beginning. So we have now got going to have a new site with new desktop features, and it's going to be fully responsive. So if you're on your phone, it's going to look very good compared to our tool today. A new trip planner. You're going to be able to put favorites in of your favorite stations, your favorite trips. And there's going to be new station pages and a lot of really great functionality that our customers have told us that they want. Just to prepare yourselves, it's not going to be perfect. We have 2 more releases later this year, so we know we're not done, but it's a journey, and our customers are going to walk that journey with us. The onboard experience is also very important. The onboard experience is very important. We know 78% of our customers are telling us that the quality time that they have on their train is very important to them. So what we want to do is continue to refresh our coaches and continue to make updates as we need. We do know that the new cars, there's about 130 of them out there, that there's been some mixed reaction to that. There's been some very positive and there's been some concerns. But the good thing is we've been working with them. We've already adjusted the seats to provide more leg room. We're now exploring the headrests that some people are concerned about. So we're working with our customers to get feedback on that. Another key issue that's close to my heart is accessibility. We know there's some issues with how people get on and off the seats with it, and so we've got some ideas on how to fix that. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I'll be really quick. I have 30 slides, so I'll go through them very quickly. The 25% piece of the pie is core and essential, really, to delivering on the RER transformation, and it's going to be a step change for us in operations. Integration is going to be key for us. We have many partners. There's a lot of moving parts, CN, CP, Bombardier, and other service providers, so we're going to have to work closely with them. There's long lead times on all of these things as well. Crews take up to a year to train. Vehicles have longer lead times, as we well know. And we're going to have to modify our maintenance and inspection procedures so that we can have more meaningful, longer touch time on those vehicles so we can maintain that. And so we're going to have to change and look at our business processes in order to achieve this. Work block design is one of the key areas that we're going to focus on. We're going to work closely with our CPG partners, and so that we can give them as much time as they need so they can go out and maximize their production. And then we can coordinate that with our service improvements so we can minimize the impact to our customers. Capacity is at a premium. That needs to be said and understood, and it's particularly here at Union Station. It's the heartbeat of our system. And so we have to look at ways in how we're managing that capacity and continually increasing that capacity. And so we're looking at our business processes. The new services will be peak and off-peak. They'll be RER-like two-way all day with higher frequencies. And how we'll do that is through, again, maximizing the capacity, but also asset utilization, so maximizing the use of those assets. So we're going to be splitting trains. We're going to be running shorter trains. That's going to allow us to free up that equipment so we can maintain it and modify it and upgrade it for future RER services.
Does that mean like in the evening, coming in from Lakeshore East, you might only be 4 cars instead of the big train?
Yeah, it will be a smaller train when, and it's not an easy undertaking to just go and to start splitting trains up and there's a lot of risk to that, but we will run shorter trains, so 6-car trains, if you will. It may mean that customers may have to stand. They might not get a seat if it's very busy, but we need to maximize that capacity and free up that fleet in order to get us to RER.
I find in the evenings, 8, 9, 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
we're a handful of people on each car, so there'd be no problem if you can cut it back.
And we'll need to monitor that closely. If there's a Jays game or a hockey game, we will make sure that there's enough equipment out there. But that's really key for us to be successful and make sure we maximize that capacity.
And we're going to see so much more of that. I mean, when we get to RER on the Stouffville line, during parts of the off-peak period during the day, we'll run 2 cars when we have an EMU fleet.
Yes.
I think what Andre and his team are sort of tussling with currently is the rolling stock we've got is not that flexible as an EMU could be.
Absolutely. So the fleet strategy, and it's all coming together well now, looks at what we're doing today, how we can manage today, looks at the entire transformation, and also the time when we're starting to hand over to a project co, and then the fleet strategy will go.
Well, more mixed fleet's going to make these kinds of things better.
Yeah.
Rob, we consider that more like operational agility. Do things differently. Because we reached a conclusion very early in, you just can't do what you're doing harder and faster and get to this level of step change. It has to be a paradigm shift in approach.
Good.
So I don't want to miss the point, but safety is the lens we apply to any of this. And so that's key to our operational excellence vision. Everything that we're doing here, including these proposed service improvements, has an element of safety to it. We're going to be looking at fatigue management. We're going to be looking at work zone incursions, including technologies that will help us eliminate those. So I don't want to be remiss and not mention that. So we'll go to the next slide. And so our journey is continuing. We've already started. We're well on our way. In fact, we've got a long history of doing many of these things very well. We have great tools. Helen Farrell-Walker and the HR team has given us some fantastic tools that will help us deliver on the transformational leadership that's going to be required to do that. And so transformational leadership is very fitting for this transformation. We're defining our operations excellence as really the pursuit of continual improvement, and it's a systematic pursuit that we're looking for. And we want to create that sustainable value for our customers and for the taxpayers as we go through that. It all starts with people. None of this can be successful unless we engage the wisdom of the entire team. So that's the cornerstone of operational excellence. And then I'll move quickly now to, and also I need to talk about customer and community centricity. We're doing many good things right now, and everything that we do starts with the voice of the customer. Everything we do considers the impact on communities, because our new services will make a change in service patterns, and we want to make sure that we recognize and we empathize with those communities, and we're out there engaging them. So we could talk about mitigations, we could talk about their needs, we could also educate them on initiatives and mitigations that they may be responsible for, such as anti-whistling. So that's very important that we do that. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk quickly about lean culture. And we know that this is really going to be key for our success. We have to we have to eliminate waste, and we have to promote agility where at all possible. So again, using people as the catalyst to achieving this, we've already identified many ways to do this. But however, we have to be careful. There's risks when you trying to change a culture. If you go too high and wide, there's a chance that initiative could be crushed under the weight of itself. So we want to be very surgical, very specific and pragmatic, and how we're doing that is by starting to
Andre, just give the board very briefly, just 2 seconds or 4 seconds, a brief overview of what lean is.
Lean is the elimination of waste. It's maximizing customer value and eliminating everything that the customer doesn't want. Now, some of the things they need to have and they might not still want to pay for it, but it's about maximizing that value proposition to the customer.
And
so that's the focus.
The tools that go with that good companies use, and we're going to start using that.
We're starting to use those, and we're using them today. In fact, the first thing that we're using them for is visualization tools, or control rooms, if you will. They're known in the academia world as Obeya rooms, and so we have those stood up already. We have multiple of these, and 2 of them are already starting to provide immediate results. And one of the ones that I'll refer to as far as the results we're already achieving is when we put out contracts, we have productivity risk that's factored into that. And sometimes that will influence the cost and schedule. It'll also influence the contingencies. Because of the work that we've been doing with CPG and the operations team, we've been actually been able to drive that productivity factor, risk factor, down from 25 to 15%, which is going to allow us to negotiate harder and drive that cost and schedule down. And that's really important for us to be successful with the massive construction we're undertaking. And the last one that I'd like to raise is on the community side. The heartbeat of our business is Union Station. And we have a lot going on here. It's a very complex operating environment. And we have to keep a handle on things. The neighbors here, they love us, but they also are frustrated by what we do and, of course, the growth that they're experiencing and living nearby. And we've struggled in the past to communicate exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and what that means to them as far as their quality of life. Because of the use of these visualization rooms, these Obeya rooms, we're actually in confidence able to tell them exactly what they're going to hear, when they're going to hear it, and when it's going to stop. Now, they're still not happy with that, but they have more confidence in that we're able to deliver. And in fact, last month, we went with 0 complaints for idling locomotives in the east end of our operation. Now, that came at great effort and some expense and some risk to the business, but that's the trade-off we're willing to make, and these Obeya rooms have allowed us to do that. We're pretty excited about where Operations Excellence is going to take us. We have a very strong team. Greg's team is incredibly strong and getting stronger by the day. And so we're really excited about the assets that we're going to receive, and we'll be able to operate those assets. And Mary will tell you how she's going to promote those and drive revenue as well. Greg?
So that's a good handoff, and to keep it short, Mary will be the closer, as she is excellent at being, and she's going to tell you how we're going to just drive revenue into the system. This is not about moving more trains and buses. This is driving revenue, and ultimately that will lead to subsidy reduction in the business. So it's a business-based decision-making that you're sharing about.
Thank you very much for that. Mary, come on up, take over. I'm going to assume there were no questions there. That was very clear.
Just a quick.
We're behind schedule. One quick question.
Yeah, for Jocelyn, on the comfort or discomfort of the cars, and I had an experience last week where I was on one of the new ones, the disability cars.
Yes.
And I guess my question is, I sat down in the thing like in 30 seconds went, what's wrong with this seat? So when we're, and you may already have this, but to me, we're now in a position where, okay, how do you fix that? Which to me takes time, costs money, et cetera. So what's the vetting process? And you don't need to answer now, but what's the vetting process to not have that? Because it was like, as I said, and as soon as I started shifting around, everybody in the car was like, oh yeah, you got the new seat. Oh wow, hey. And of course, Phil got an interesting email from me as we did a little focus group on it. But it just strikes me as somehow before we take it, buy it, design it.
Did it go through design excellence?
I don't know, but it certainly didn't.
We discussed this at the Customer Experience Committee. We had a very good discussion of it. Phil's taken it on board with Greg and the team, and they're going to take a look at the process because there's some unevenness in this. I actually then took the train to try the chairs after that a couple of nights ago, and I thought they were better than they were being cracked up for, but I understand the headrest problem. So, but they're on it, but more importantly, they're on the process.
Oh yeah, no, I just thought.
Process. Mary, you got to do this faster. No one else has been able to speed up, but I have more confidence in you than all the others that have spoken. And I know you can deliver the goods.
Thank you for having us here this morning.
We're thrilled to have you.
Last night you heard me describe my background in public service and in the private sector, and I have that same blend of private and public sector experience in this talented team that I've brought with me today. Ken Kushai is our Director of Customer Experience and Insights, and he comes to us from Longo's and from Loyalty One Air Miles before that, and from HP before that. And your Bachelor of Commerce is not from the University of Toronto, but McMaster. Yes.
Best university in Hamilton, Ontario. So.
Mary, let everyone introduce themselves. Sharon.
Hello, hi, I'm Sharon Byrne-Nearing. I'm the Acting Director of Brand and Marketing, formerly from Cabinet Office, the Ministry of Finance, Dublin. I have a degree in psychology from the Dublin City University.
Steve Naylor, been in Metrolinx 7 years, MTO before that. Got a CPA from Laurier, risk management from U of T, and a certified fraud examiner.
Great. Fire away, Mary.
And you might think that with that background, that Steve might be risk averse, but he's one of the most entrepreneurial minds in this organization, and we're lucky to have him. So you've heard Peter describe this morning what he's building, and you've heard Greg describe the train capacity that he's building. My job and the job of my team is going to be to build the ridership and revenue that fills that system. And we own two parts on the strategic wheel. There we are. We will be delivering a return on investment of our marketing spend of 3 to 1. That will be our aim. We will also
What does that mean? Does that mean for every dollar we spend on marketing, you'd expect to get 3 or more back?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And until now, it has been Greg who had told me where the trains are being expanded, and my job to try and find the riders to put on them. But going forward, we are going to be much more of a classic marketing department like you would find in a commercial enterprise, where it is marketing that is uncovering those untapped markets and telling Greg where we need to put service. We also have an aim to increase our non-fare revenue by 75%, and transit companies around the world have discovered streams of non-fare revenue to try and reduce and eliminate the public subsidy, and we are on that same path. And finally, we have a retail strategy that we adopted 3 years ago based on Go Essentials. And it's coming to life this year with the adoption of the Kilmer pilot that is seeing Tim Hortons open at 5 of our stations, and also the brand new PC Express that will be introduced at another 5 of our stations later this spring, and which already has garnered so much positive press. So to describe these in a little greater detail, I'd like Ken to kick us off.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you for having me. I probably have the coolest job at Metrolinx, which means I focus on everything the customer wants and is interested in. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is how we're using our customer experience team, our analytics team, and our research team to deepen and strengthen our understandings about our customers and to permeate that through the rest of the business. And so while our focus is to understand regional travel needs, we're looking outside of the region and even outside of industries to find out what those best practices are, to make sure that we're bringing the best to Metrolinx. And a significant part of this process when we're done is to understand what are the things we're doing really well to make sure we keep doing them. What are some of the things we might want to think about doing a little bit differently? And what are some of the things that we're not doing right now that we should really start to look at doing to engage customers? And once we get those insights, what we do is we work collaboratively with the rest of the team inside Metrolinx, because there's expertise all about Metrolinx, and to bring these insights to life, we really need to understand what's the right priority, what's going to be the right investment. So it is a collaborative effort once the insights are identified. And to give you a sense of how this is going to work and how it's already started to work, I'm going to walk you through one of the processes that we're using. And it's really a simplified customer journey. And it starts off with the moment of truth when a customer establishes that they have a need to travel. And right now, we know that 90% of our boardings are for people traveling for work. We also know, though, that 39% of the people are traveling for entertainment purposes. So as a percentage of our population, we've got a lot of people who aren't traveling for work, but as a volume, it really is for work. So what we're doing is we're organizing partnerships and promotions to incent more travel. So the Niagara Falls initiative that Steve's group brought about last year, as well as the Auto Show, are these types of initiatives that are encouraging encouraging travel for outside of work purposes. Once they've established the need to travel, then they're going to take a look at their options. So the car, the train, rideshare being another one. And they're going to start to weigh those options, but they can't even consider it an option if they don't have access to it. And our customers, 68% of the non-transit customers, have told us that they don't have access to transit. So we're going to work with operations to identify where are these most concentrated pockets of customers where it makes sense to invest. And then if it makes sense, route changes, schedule changes to accommodate those customers to make this one of their options. Once it's part of that option set, they're going to start to take a look at things like time, cost, what type of amenities are available. And this is a neat one for me because 82% of our customers have identified that Wi-Fi is something that they want. And it was announced recently, we're going to have a Wi-Fi pilot kick off in April. So this is an example of where we're taking that insight and putting it into practice.
This is Wi-Fi on buses and trains.
Wi-Fi on buses and trains.
Right through the system.
Right through the system. Well, pilot.
Yes. But the pilot is to get to an end state with Wi-Fi everywhere.
Correct. So the pilot allows us to make sure that we get it right before we roll it out.
Got it.
Okay. We also know that 71% of our customers say that the fare is a little bit high. So we have promotions, the most recent one being the Family Day promotion, where kids under 12 got to ride for free. So this encourages trial of the system and also helps inform future strategies around what we want to do with our fares. Now for the last two, I know a lot's been said about safety, but this is a fun one for me because we talk about safety as a part of our culture, but there's a customer element to it that's really important. So Jocelyn previously said that 78% of our customers like to ride the train because it gives them me time. 57% of those people like to sleep during that me time. This becomes important because 85% of our customers say they feel safe. Now, I've got kids, and I don't know about anybody else here, but my kids do not sleep well if they don't feel safe. So here you're now taking a safety element, translating it directly to a customer experience that allows them to enjoy a really enjoyable experience. So if they had a late night or a long day, now they can go home and get a little bit of a boost before they have to deal with the next thing on their agenda. It's also the reason why we brought in the quiet zones a number of years back. So on that top level, if anybody is like myself, I go straight up to the top level and I'm either doing work or sometimes when the week's been long, I'm catching a snooze. So with that, I'd like to pass it back to Mary and
Thank you, Ken. So when those passengers are not sleeping, they're also being bombarded by many, many brand messages a day. And Sharon, how are we going to break through that clutter?
Thank you. So I'm not sure if you're aware, 4,000 to 10,000 brand messages every day. That's what you're exposed to. That is a lot of clutter that you're passively consuming. So our job in the marketing department is to cut through that clutter and break through. So we're going to do that in a number of ways. This is why we're calling this disruptive marketing. I had the pleasure at Cabinet Office to lead a lot of initiatives, a lot of creative marketing platforms that were very bold. So I'm bringing that experience with me to drive more aggressive, creative platforms that will break through in a very resonant way for our audiences. Some additional initiatives that we're looking at is, so if we think about those passive messages that you're absorbing, really those one-to-one personal interactions are actually where you can drive conversions and actually sell products and services. So we want to do more of those in-person activations to highlight our service and product offerings. Some additional approaches will be optimizing our partnerships to add additional value to our customers. We're also looking at loyalty programs to reward our very loyal customers so they can become advocates and ambassadors for our services. But lastly, as Ken mentioned, looking at promotional offerings to incent trial. Ken mentioned the Family Day weekend. This is a cute little picture of this Go Bear here. What we did was we created a customer experience targeted to children. So we had a pricing promotion that children 12 and under traveled free. It was a great offering because it actually gave us the opportunity to sell the service to parents that, you know, a single parent can actually benefit from the group ticket. So for them to actually be able to access the service with their children, we knew cost was a barrier for a lot of families when it comes to our service. So removing that barrier so they could try our service actually netted out to very high scores in satisfaction. I think we had like 86% were very satisfied with our service, and 3 in 4 of those families traveling with children between the ages of 6 and 12 said that they would be very likely to consider our service for future trips, and not just weekend trips for leisure, but also commuter trips. So that was a really great learning for us. Some additional learnings that we had: we need more time to get out into market. This was a very quick to market program, so we need a good bit of lead time to get out there and talk to not only our current customers, but also those less frequent customers. Additionally, I've lost my thread.
Sharon, you're great. Talk a little bit about what the cool things you want to do on Barrie, and explain to the board how this off-peak dimension of stimulating the market is so essential to our overall RAR business case.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So when I think about people, they have 3 finite resources, and that's time, energy, and money. So when we look at that from a psychology perspective and applying the behavioral insights that from Ken's team, we want to remove those barriers and make our service easy, attractive, a solution to their travel problems, and also make it timely. So we're looking at a promotion for April. I hope I'm allowed to speak about this.
Yes, okay.
Okay, it's because
not an announcement, it's just an idea.
A general idea. So as you're aware, we recently increased service on the Barrie line significantly, especially on the weekends. So we know that Barrie is a very growing geographic area. We knew from a demographic perspective that most of our commuters coming in from Barrie are women between the ages of 25 to 45, and happy International Women's Day. We know that women in the household are the ones that basically do all the planning, organize all those trips on the weekends for their families. So we want to target them with the Kids Ride Free promotion for the weekends. So what we learned from Family Day was that we need to do longer promotions. We need to be able to track and trial over time, so we can change people's behaviours and really normalise transit use as a really great stress-free option for families to get in and around the region. So that program will hopefully kick off on Good Friday. It will run right through until Labour Day. We'll be monitoring the success over time. So I'm very excited about that one particular initiative.
Well done, Sharon.
Thank you.
Steve, bring us home.
Thank you. So, strategic partnerships. We've been working on those since 2015, and you see on the page up there a number of our good corporate partners that we have in place and ones that we'll be looking at. These partnerships develop both revenue in cash as well as in kind, and we've utilized those to reduce our reliance on our subsidy to date. And as we look over the future, we see that as a strong way to continue to reduce the deficit, or subsidy, sorry. Like most leading transit organizations, our non-fare revenue comes from a variety of sources. We've benchmarked ourselves against many leading organizations, and we're comfortable that we either are or will be maximizing over the next few years those revenue sources and carrying them out. So right now, where does our revenue come from? Our primary source of revenue is advertising, and we'll be taking a number of steps this year to continue to maximize that. In 2013, when we started with an advertising program, the revenue was approximately $3 million. By 2021, that will grow to north of $10 million with the initiatives we currently have in plan. So that is a healthy return and generates much higher than the 3-to-1 ratio. Also, while we did that, increasing that advertising, we've done it in a way that we ensure it provides a greater degree of safety in the network. It's found to be more engaging by our customer, and at the end of the day, it's also much more environmentally friendly. Whether we use that through digital boards and LED lighting, or topiary advertising that exists on the Gardiner Expressway. Moving through what we're going to do, you heard Mary talk about the retail strategy. This is an excitement for us and an opportunity where we think we can address a number of the needs of the customer. And we will be coming back to our senior management team with principals later this year, and then working in the transit-oriented development world to come back with a full plan later in the summer and look at and operationalizing it in the fall of this year. The key things we'll be looking at is making sure that we bring strong brands. We've found by our partnerships, the best thing we can do is bring good brands to the table. Our customers respond. We also want to make sure that we plan for all the infrastructure needs so that they're incorporated in Peter's plans as he goes forward for the station, so they're done cost effectively. We will look at things like pop-up retail, because that is a new trend. well received. We also know that when we look at our stations, our retail environment has to focus on non-labor types of retail, and we'll go back out there and find that, and we'll use the
What
expression.
kinds of retail?
Pardon me?
Papa.
Pop-up and non-labor utilized retail.
What does non-labor mean?
So our PC Express is a good example where you don't have to have someone physically there to provide the retail. And we'll go look at all those and follow the trends and look at emerging trends that are coming out. And we'll be back soon to report on those components. And other items that we're looking, you'll see things like the cell tower on the chart up there. We're looking at ways to commercialize our other assets, things like our corridors, to ensure that we maximize the value coming from those. On that point, Mary?
Mary, when you bring these brands in, one of the directors, won't surprise you, raised, what's the risk of kind of brand confusion? We're branding Metrolinx, and we got our hierarchy of brands, and then you've got a Tim Hortons sign and a Loblaw sign and, you know, whatever else, other signs you might. How do you avoid this becoming a jumble of signage and confusion of brands?
So we're actually working very closely with design excellence. So for example, when TD Bank here at Union Station wanted to install a kiosk, we ran the design that they presented by design excellence, who actually improved that before giving it back to us. And so we're moving in lockstep with them.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Good. And so what I hope has emerged is not only that we within marketing have a single-minded focus on satisfying customers of today and acquiring customers of the future, but that Peter, Greg, and I are also moving in lockstep in a very close and integrated way to realize and fulfill all of our strategic priorities.
Rahul,
just a quick
snappy question.
Real quick one. Lots of really neat things going on here in terms of getting people on, and when they get on to enhance the experience. What are you thinking around last mile?
So thank you for asking that. I have just returned from a conference of the American Public Transit Association, and the partnership that most of the transit agencies in North America are pursuing are with ride-sharing programs. And we are no different. We are looking at trials that we can put on to solve that first mile, last mile, because we realize that for the last 50 years, we've operated on a hub and spoke model whereby we've brought customers to our stations through the lure of free parking. But as we quadruple our service over the next decade, we will not be able to quadruple our supply of free parking. And that means we must look at other alternatives to bring customers to our stations.
Who's getting that right now? Who's doing that last mile piece right?
It's too new. It's too new, and there's also a little bit of nervousness about the viability of some of the ride-sharing entities out there. So we're kind of all at the brink of this new development.
Thank you. Good job. Carry on. Get it done. Thank you. Steve, get that 75% or whatever it is.
Will do.
Thanks. That brings us to Alba and Mary.
So you may all remember that at the December board meeting a few months ago, we approved the CROSSTOWN privacy policy, subject to any comments the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner may have. We've now had that dialogue. It didn't result in many changes. And Alba also wants to update you. Alba's been the lead on this project on where we're at with our law enforcement and privacy policy.
Thank you very much, Mary. Alba, over to you. Snappy.
Certainly. Thank you for having me back today to provide an update on this important program. I'll be speaking to the input received from the IPC very briefly, but for the first time we're reporting on how many law enforcement requests we received in 2017 and how we've responded to those. Preparing for today's report gave me an opportunity to review the kinds of circumstances that lead to a call from police or transit officers. Last spring, for example, we received a call from police because family and friends were concerned about a missing person. That person had recently lost a parent. And they had no contact with family or friends for days, and they turned off their cell phone. This unusual behavior had people worried. Also in the spring, we had transit special constables contacting us looking for the travel history of a person suspected in multiple sexual assaults on a transit vehicle. The information provided would be used to support the charge and investigate other reported incidents. In another case, local police called because they were worried about the health and safety of a missing youth. And Presto was able to confirm the time and date of the last tap for that individual to help officers with their search. And this is just a sample of the bulk of calls that we receive, and for the first time we're reporting on that. This reporting also supports Metrolinx's commitment to privacy, transparency, and continual improvement. And although some telcos make this or similar information available, we believe this is the first time a transit agency in Canada is making it available. So, what do the numbers say? Well, they're in the presentation and the pie charts that were in front of you. We got 64 requests for Presto customer data, 27 related to emergencies or missing people, 33 related to law enforcement investigations, and overall we provided information 30 times. These compare favorably to other figures that have been reported in the media by some of our sister agencies like TransLink, who also have a travel card. In August, it was reported that TransLink had received 132 requests from law enforcement, and they disclosed information 82 times. So we're within the ballpark, certainly. Turning quickly to what the IPC said about our proposed policy, you'll recall that we approved.
You said there were 33 from law enforcement.
Yep.
How many of those did we provide information on? And how many do we just do it, and how many did we require them to get a warrant?
22 times we provided information. Of that 22, 2 required a production order. So 20 without production.
So 20, you, on considering the matter, decided it was appropriate to provide the information.
Based on our revised policy, which permits disclosure in cases where there's been an incident on a transit system.
So in the case of the missing kid, police come to you and say, John is missing.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like to know whether we think he had a Presto card registered. Can you tell us when he last tapped? Is that the request you get?
That would be an emergency request. That's the other 27.
Okay, so even if it's from a law enforcement official?
Typically, they all come from law enforcement.
Okay,
yes.
so law enforcement says that.
Yep.
And you respond affirmatively to that?
We provide them with a form. They need to fill it out. We find if we have information. Once we've received the completed form from them, then we will provide information, perhaps related to last tap.
Yeah, and we test whether it meets our conditions of being relevant, being time critical, being an incident of concern as we've got in our standard, and then we release.
And in the form, we ask them to provide us with some of the evidence of the circumstances relating to their inquiry.
And so if that same law enforcement official, as you know, I'm very much on the privacy side of this spectrum. I'm just trying to understand how it works. If that same law enforcement official said, we're trying to find this kid because we think he stole something from a store in town, and we think he has a card. Same story, but it's not because we're afraid he's missing, but we think he's a crook.
Yep.
What do you do in on those facts?
We tell them to obtain a production order.
That requires that would be in the 2 of the 32 or
Correct.
3 that required a production order.
Correct.
And you require a production order because that's just a criminal investigation, and so there's no reason to give private information.
And nothing to do with our transit system, yes.
Okay.
So, Alba, there were 22 releases, but there were several others where we refused to release as well.
Yes, certainly. There were 11, if we do the...
Yeah, 33 requests, 11 you just said no.
Yep.
Example being mine.
Yep.
Unless they come back with a production order.
Correct.
2 where they came with a production order, and 20 where you just gave it to them because it fit our emergency requirements.
Yeah. That's right. And even when we disclose information, we minimize.
Right.
Related only to the incident,
right.
Yeah.
And then you said we compare favorably to TransLink. That seems to suggest the fewer times we give the information is favorable. In your use of the word favorable, I took it that more disclosure you view as a bad thing, less disclosure as a good thing. If TransLink is giving it out 3 times or 4 times as frequently as us.
So, absolutely right. for us as an organization, it is this really important tension and balance we need to keep between the privacy of our Presto cardholders, which we put an extremely high priority on. And that is why the conditions under which we release information is a very narrowly defined field, and that narrowly defined field is all about the interests of those same people. If we are in the process of releasing information on what type of instances we are having where we release information, and it's about inquiries about imminent risk, imminent safety risk, missing persons, and issues that are particularly important to those same users. And that feels very narrow. And that balance between what we release and privacy is extremely crucial to us. So in order to talk to the chair's question, the less we release is a measure of good management and good balance.
That's very helpful. And the tone of the material doesn't fully capture the way you and Phil have now put that. I think it's very good what you both said. And so to the extent we publicize this as our policy, I think it should emphasize how seriously we take privacy.
Robert, I'm just going to put that into context with 3 million Presto card holders and the number of requests. This is a very, very small number in that context as well.
Sprint to the end, Alba, you're doing great.
Just that one of the recommendations was that from the IPC was that we annually review our program. We've committed to annual reporting on these statistics, so that provides a natural opportunity to calibrate that important balance between protecting privacy and safety and security.
And so the IPC's basically signed off now on this.
I don't think they would put it that way, but they had provided us with their...
You've accommodated all their comments, and so we think we're aligned.
Correct.
Very good. Any further questions? You happy with this, Brian?
Yeah, certainly, but just on that last point, you said we'll be filing annually or making public annually. Do we have separate filing obligations to the Privacy Commissioner?
No.
No? Okay.
Any other comments? So we're not asking for approval because we already delegated to management to make any adjustments. They've made the adjustments in the policy, further strengthened it. I think we're in a good place. Thank you very much, Alba. You've handled this file really well.
Thank you very much.
Peggy, you're up next. You don't need to speak. We've read your report. Questions to Peggy on Auditor General's activities.
I won't get comfortable.
I would just say, as chair of the Audit and Finance Risk Management Committee, that Peggy prepares for each of our meetings a full update every quarter on the status of the 2016 audit report, and that was presented to us, and it's on track, on time.
Excellent. Any questions? I see none. Thank you very much, Peggy. No questions on something like this is a very positive congratulatory statement, right?
Sure.
It means we're confident you're doing everything you should be doing, so thank you. Customer Experience Committee update, Marianne?
I think I can be extremely brief because every one of the slides have been spoken to. Maybe just...
So you had a good meeting?
We had a very good meeting. Yes, I think it's broad and wide-ranging, and I think all of the presentations today speak to all these issues of the touch points of customer experience from operations, capital projects, design excellence. So,
any questions to Marianne about I was at the meeting. I thought it was an excellent meeting, and you're right. Every one of your slides has been presented by a person in management. It's really good.
More articulate.
Well, not more articulate, but it shows it's working. It's integrated.
Very efficient, Marianne.
Very good. That brings us to the quarterly reports. They are in order. Presto, as you know, Annalise, were you at the board today?
No.
Just stand up and just say who you are now, Annalise. Just through us to the public, who you are. Just introduce yourself.
Thanks. I'm Annalise Cherney. I'm the acting EVP for Presto as of February 1st.
And before that, you were?
I was the manager of strategy for Presto. Went to the University of Guelph for engineering, and the University of Université de Québec à Trois-Rivières for Masters in Applied Physics, and did my MBA at the London Business School.
And you've been with us for 5 years, 6 years? 5 years with us, and is now heading Presto. Rob Hollis went off to the private sector. Annalise has stepped up as acting. And you've got a competition underway for the permanent job?
Not yet, but we'll start it in June.
Got it. Any questions to Annalise? Ton going on. Keep it up, thank you. Next is operations. We've already heard lots from Greg. Anything else, Greg, you need to tell us? Any questions of Greg? Good job, Greg, thank you. Planning and development, I'm not going to permit any questions to Leslie. She's had so much airtime today that she's done. Capital projects, Peter, you were more process today. Is there anything on substance that we should know about?
Only that we are in anger, having 2-day monthly reviews of every project.
It's good. It's good. Judy, we haven't heard from you today. Why don't you come at the table? Anything you want to speak to?
It's all in the report.
Anything about the fact that we're getting close to an election writ period as to how Metrolinx conducts itself, public servants conduct themselves in a writ period?
Sure. What we do is we follow the provincial standard in terms of we ensure that we're doing our community meetings and working with Mary's team, our marketing, in a manner that aligns with Ontario government standards in terms of going quiet during the writ period, and we'll be complying.
So Secretary of Cabinet sent out a communication to all public services, and including to us, but it's across the government, and that's been shared with the senior team, I believe, and we'll conduct ourselves consistent with that, which means being quiet for, 6 weeks or so?
We'll start probably as early as March 10th.
Okay. So, anybody have any questions to Judy? Okay, marketing. Mary, you've just been up. Anything you need to add? Any questions to Mary? Great. Is that it?
Yep.
Is that it? Before we go back, got a couple of commercial things to do afterwards, but we're going to take a break. We'll meet with the media. There should be a bite of lunch available, and then we'll reconvene in a few minutes to finish up. Let me thank everybody for attending. We appreciate your attendance and your interest. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.